Up there.
It's like, a game show.
And just so the board knows, under your board package, you've got you all asked about the ARC memo or the memorandum of understanding, what's included. So I gave you a copy of that. And then there's another letter there from DSS.
Hey. All right. I call the April 6th meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. We'll begin with the pledge of allegiance followed by a moment of silence. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Dahl, any changes?
Yeah, just a couple things just for a quick discussion. One, under unfinished business, there's a potential funding opportunity for the Zion's Crossroads waterline extension. So I just wanted to follow up with the board on that. And then under new business, there's a letter there from the Department of Social Services to me regarding their budget. So just follow up on those items.
Do we have a closed session?
We will have a closed session, and then we have the 7 p.m. work session as well.
Yes, I mean, yeah, I was on top of
Yep,
that.
yep.
Zion Crossroads, water line.
Yep.
Sorry, what is that, new business?
Yes, ma'am.
If I want to talk about is health. Health.
Health, okay.
And let's see what else. Now. Just to start a discussion. Nothing more.
Okay. An idea, but we'll talk about it. It'll be a closed session.
Okay.
All righty, do we have an adoption of the agenda with changes so made?
I vote to adopt the agenda with changes made.
All righty, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Those opposed, chair votes aye, motion passes 5-0, motion made by Ms. Booker, seconded by Ms. Egan. All right,
So real quick, Moselle, what you were saying, you said you have some items you want us to discuss that aren't on the agenda, is that what you're saying?
It's not.
just want to bring it up on the new business.
Okay.
We're gonna bring it up.
Okay.
And you said it was,
Health.
So when will we discuss that?
Under new business,
Tonight? then?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
There'll be no action necessarily. It's just a discussion.
all right, Mr. Dahl.
Yes, Mr. Sheridan, members of the board, actually had to trim back a little bit. Had a lot of things to report, a lot of things happening here recently. So one, we got some new county staff members. Alan Davis started as the assistant registrar in the registrar's office, started on March 28th. William Ross started as family services specialist for Department of Social Services, started March 28th. And then Rachel Brewster started as the financial services technician for accounts payable in the finance office. And she started on April 4th. Just kind of give the community a heads up. So VDOT's bridge crew is preparing construction of the Route 639 bridge over South Fork Cunningham Creek. Construction is scheduled to begin April 4th and will last approximately 6 weeks. So Long Acre Road will be closed throughout the duration of this. And they're not going to be putting out any formal, detour here or anything
You
like
got
that.
drive on about a mile and a half. We went, of course, on the 4th, we went down and then drive.
Yeah, and they'll be putting up some message boards just informing the public, but there's going to be no formal detours or anything like that. And like I said, it's scheduled to last 6 weeks. The library's been busy. The library, I gave out grab and go tiny art kits to anyone ages 10 and up that wanted one. And they asked them to create a tiny piece of art and return it to the Fluvanna County's library for a tiny art show. The tiny art show will begin at the library on Monday, March 21st through April 16th. So it's been going on currently. So please stop by and check out all of the tiny talented artists in Fluvanna County, and that's sponsored by the Friends of the Library. Also, again, at the library, they had their first Storytime Pig Roundup. After some great stories about pigs, everyone participated in a pig roundup. So kids are having a good time, and Miss Hoffman's doing a lot of great things, you know, getting some summer programming and spring and kind of gearing up for summer programming again. And also Fluvanna High School's SGA came for Hands on Fluvanna to help the library set up a mini golf course for spring break. The golf course will be available for everyone to play during all library hours next week. So they've got kind of some cardboard boxes, and they set up a little kind of a putt-putt mini golf course for those that come in and test their golf skills out. For social services, you know, certainly looking for individuals of the community to be foster care parents. So Fluvanna County Department of Social Services is looking for nurturing, patient, and understanding community members to become foster families. You know, help us keep our children in our home community. Training and support is provided. Anyone wanting more information can contact Allison Pace at 434-842-8221. So the control burn, also known as a prescribed burn at Pleasant Grove Park, occurred on March 30th, 2022. And if you're looking at the map on the left here, right here, the yellow, well, the blue line right in front of here, that's 53. Here's the entrance into Pleasant Grove Park. The thick orange outlined area is the meadow that the control burn happened. The control burn was performed by Chuck Wright of the Virginia Department of Forestry, and he had 8 other local foresters come out to help. The meadow burn started at around just before noon and took approximately 3 hours. You can see here, there's just some pictures of the burn and kind of what they did. You know, like I said, again, they had a lot of their burn, a lot of the dozer areas already kind of put in place, so that would help the fire from not spreading where they didn't want it to go. And just as a quick little, I think there might be a little video here. Let me see here. You can just kind of see what they went through, but again, it was a pretty quick thing, and you know, nothing smoldered or lasted that long. I think there was one little log that lasted a little bit, but everything went through pretty quick without a hitch. And so, you know, they have to have just the absolute right conditions when they do that regarding humidity, wind, and all that. So again, you know, the meadow will be flourishing right before you know it. Also, the butterfly garden has been without water since it was installed. Water had to be brought in for plants to grow. So thanks to Public Utilities, Roger Smith and Greg Sawyer for getting this project completed on March 4th. They came out with mini excavator and extended the water line to where it needed to go. Again, you know, good job by county staff to kind of do something that, you know, sometimes we'd normally have to have a contract crew come in and do. Also at Pleasant Grove Park, the Rotary Club of Fluvanna wanted to do a project with Parks and Rec to benefit the community. So the Rotary Club purchased materials, installed a parking lot at the disc golf course with help of FUMA's Interact Club, and they did that on March 26, 2022. There are also future plans for the Rotary Club to install a kiosk next to the parking lot for disc golf information. And you can see some pictures there of them laying down the gravel, putting up the border, and kind of the right picture is kind of the finished product of the little parking pad, the gravel parking pad. Fluvanna County will have our Earth Day tire drop-off event Saturday, April 23rd. That's going to be from 10 a.m. to noon at Pleasant Grove Park. Proof of Fluvanna County residency is required. must present a valid ID. Again, arrive early because there's limited collection capacity. And again, when trucks are full, the event will close. All tires must be off rims, no tractor tires, no big rig tires. And again, this is not for electronics or hazardous waste, and you can't be a commercial vendor coming in with a semi truck full of tires or anything like that. It's just for households. And it's again, usually someone coming in with a pickup truck at most is kind of the capacity for what we will take. Is that correct, Mr. Spitzer?
12 tires.
12 tires.
3 cars.
Yep. Thank you. Also coming up in April, Fluvanna Parks and Rec will do the annual Easter egg hunt in Pleasant Grove, Saturday, April 12th at 10 a.m. Arrive early and bring your basket. This is a free event open to ages 12 and younger. The hunt will begin promptly at 10 a.m. And I think if you're not there at 10:02 a.m., 10:02, you're probably going to be out of luck for getting Easter eggs. It's a pretty fast and furious event, so make sure you're there right on time. It's a 16th. 16th, okay. Correction, April 16th, Saturday, April 16th at 10 a.m. Thank you. Thanks, Fred. Also, in the month of April, there's a drive-through rabies clinic, Saturday, April 30th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's going to be at Pleasant Grove Park again. So the cost is $10 per animal, cash only. So pre-registration forms must be filled out and returned in advance. They can also be picked up at the FSPCA. Like I said, owners and their pets must remain in the vehicles. Dogs on leashes and cats must be in individual carriers. And again, they'll usually have a good flow and good directional traffic flow for those coming to the park for the drive-through rabies clinic.
How do they test that?
I'm sorry,
How do they test that, you know?
when we say test it.
Clinic, how do they test whether an animal has rabies?
No, this is to prevent rabies.
Okay, so what are they doing with the animals when you come to?
They'll be giving them a shot.
shot.
Yeah, a shot.
Rabies?
Yeah, rabies shot.
Just one shot.
Yeah, rabies shot. What was this? Was it Monday night? Yeah, Monday night. The EDA pitch competition, Fluvanna County Economic Development Authority held a pitch competition on April 4th. So five businesses completed a 16-week entrepreneurship program, plus an additional entrepreneur certificate program through scholarships from the EDA and the Community Investment Collaborative. There are prizes for this pitch competition for first and second place, $5,000 for first place, $3,000 for second place. Judges included CIC Representative Shannon Beach and also Supervisors Ms. Booker and Mr. Fairchild. The event was made possible by Charlottesville Area Community Foundation grant and the EDA that they received in 2021. First place was Erica Mitchell of Sweet Art Emporium, and second place was Eric Agee with Agee Services. And like I said, Mrs. Booker and Mr. Fairchild were both there. And we had some good entrepreneurs in our community, and it was a good way for them to kind of show off what they want to do and how they want to expand and use of the funds. And I think it was a good pitch competition that they had. And then just kind of lastly, upcoming meetings. So next week, April 13th at 7 p.m., we have a Board of Supervisors special meeting. And again, it's just for the public hearing for the FY23 budget and the calendar year 22 tax rate. And then April 20th at 7 p.m., we have the regular meeting where the board, regular meeting plus the board will adopt the fiscal year 23 budget and the calendar year 22 tax rate. Should the board not adopt the budget on April 20th, we've got a kind of just a placeholder follow-up meeting April 27th. But like I said, that's there only on the worst case scenario. Happy to answer any questions that the board has this evening.
Unrelated to this, but I do have some questions. Maybe I can save it for new business later. You think?
Is it something you want to bring up, you? Yeah.
Well, just a couple things. One, our county website is not up to date. And for example, Don Weaver's still shown as the supervisor for. Yeah, after 32 years.
Exactly.
It's not enough to name a building after. Yeah, a citizen contacted me saying they were unclear of where which district they fell in. And I didn't pull up both to compare, but I don't think the map,
The new map.
I don't think the new map is up there. And it's overlaid with the old supervisors group, including Don, so I suspect the new map is not.
We'll go through there and get that
Let's
up.
talk about this very slowly, because I don't want Kelly to start having spasms when we talk about.
About redistricting, yeah.
Yeah.
And we finally got our final certificate of no objection on the polling location too for the redistricting. This came in today, so.
So Don is 3 for 3.
We'll, Mr. Fairchild, we'll take a look at that. We'll get those things updated and we'll get a good current map up there.
And are we still doing business cards for board members?
Yeah, yes.
I don't have.
Yeah, but it could be a little bit delayed if I'm not sure, since I usually do that.
Oh, we can get it. We'll get some,
We'll get 'em.
yes.
All right. I'll now open the floor for first round of public comments. Anyone wishing to address the board, please step to the microphone. Keep your comments to 5 minutes. All comments direct to the board. Also, please state your name and address for anyone wishing to speak this time. Anyone online, Ms. Harris?
Yes, sir.
Okay, seeing none, I will now close first round of public comments. We have no public hearings, so we'll now move forward with action matters. First up is A, Child Abuse Prevention Month proclamation. Rocky Reed, ESS.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and I just want to give you all an overview of the Child Protective Services unit here at Fluvanna County Department of Social Services. On our Child Protective Services unit is myself, Rocky Reed, Sarah Phillip, Rosa Figueroa, Janiyah Booker, Samantha Ramirez, and William Ross.
Next, just let me know if, yeah.
The Fluvanna County Department of Social Services mission is to be leaders in collaboration with other community agencies to serve county citizens, promoting self-reliance, well-being, and the best possible quality of life. The vision statement is a community where individuals and families have access to support and protection, which promotes health, independence, and opportunities. So who initiates CPS referrals to Fluvanna County? Our largest number of referrals in the past year came from law enforcement, and we had 102 referrals from them. We work very closely with law enforcement with referrals. They go become investigations of family assessments. Followed the next largest referrals come from hospital and medical professions, including therapists and counselors, followed by parents and family members, daycares, others, and of course, we can have anonymous reports as well. Next slide. So over the last year, Child Protective Services conducted 91 investigations and family assessments. We average about 8 new cases each month. From those investigations and family assessments, in-home services and family support cases can be opened for services. We average about 17 cases per month for in-home family support. And we also conduct outreaches to referrals that may need guidance on resources or services that's in the community that they can that we can make referral to without opening a case. So this report is a victim disposition and risk annual report. When an investigation or a family assessment is completed, there's a risk assessment that has to be done to determine the risk level of reoccurring abuse or neglect. And if those risk levels come out high or very high, we are mandated to open an in-home case. If they're moderate or low, we can open up what's called a family support case for services that could be needed. Family support cases were previously known as foster care prevention. They changed the name. So there's no family support, and those are cases for, preventative services that are short-term, and like I said, have a low or moderate risk. In-home and family support cases, was only known as CPS ongoing. Are those cases, like I said, that are high or even have a court order involved. That also includes, if a parent or guardian filed for relief of custody, then we will have to open an in-home support services case before the courts would even look at, relief of custody for a parent, and then the child could possibly go into foster care after that, if we can't provide services and keep them in the home. So preventative services are an integral part of the continuum of all children child welfare. They include but not limited to providing services intended to accomplish strengthening the families, promoting the child's well-being, safety, and permanency, minimizing harm to the child, maximizing the ability of families to protect and care for their children, prevent the occurrence or reoccurrence of maltreatment, and prevent out-of-home care, including prevent foster care. So, the BDSS and the state also mandate monthly reports that we have to do, and these reports are generated from our computer system, which is Oasis, that we put all of our contacts in, all of our interactions with the family service providers and whatnot. So I do have February safe measures report where Fluvanna was 100% in-home case contacts, the family support case contacts, service planning, and safety assessment, ongoing safety assessments. In February, there were 80 total in-person contacts. So even though we have 17 cases that month, we had 80 people that we had to see in that month. Services and supports that are considered appropriate for resources for children and families can include information referral, crisis intervention, home visiting, mental health counseling, parent education and training, substance abuse disorder treatment, financial assistance, employment services, school-based services, mentoring, childcare, transportation, support groups, short-term resting, and other community-based services. These are services that we have the families and to get if they need, if there's a recommendation from our assessments or from the courts. Most of these services are covered under their insurance. If it's not covered under insurance, then it's up to our workers to seek funding and possibly go to BAP to get funding for the services that are recommended. So there were 52,263 children in Virginia reported as possible victims of abuse and neglect in 2021. So we are trying to make sure that that number comes down every year. So please, if you suspect child abuse, please report it to either your local department or the Virginia Child Abuse Hotline at 800-552-7096. Thank you. You got any questions? I'm sorry.
I was curious, did abuse go up over the past couple of years?
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
Did abuse go up over the past couple of years with parents home more?
Actually, the numbers actually stayed just about the same, even though that the referral source might have changed because the teachers weren't seeing the kids as much, but you also had neighbors that were seeing the kids that were calling reports or doctors or things like that. So the numbers didn't move hardly in.
Gotcha, thank you.
It didn't go up. That's a good thing.
Yes,
With
yes.
COVID, a lot of stuff, people became short-tempered.
Yes, we do see an increase in a lot of the mental health referrals. I guess for everybody being closed in, and we're seeing a lot of the drug abuse rise.
And now that kids are back in school, you haven't seen an increase in reporting.
Yes, we have. Which is good because the teachers are the ones that see the children the most outside of their parents.
So early it tells you whether or not
Yes, it's
it was
good.
underreported. The fact that the number stayed the same doesn't necessarily.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
All right. Next up, B, confirmation of local emergency declaration, Mr. Dahl.
Mr. Chair, there's a motion to approve. Yep.
And before the motion, I got a procedural question. When things like this come in front of the board to make a declaration say Child Abuse Prevention Month, and it just happens to be the one that's in front of us, but whichever ones it might be. What's the value in the board making these proclamations?
I think it really depends on if the board wants to bring more awareness, more public information on whatever the particular topic or proclamation is. Normally on most proclamations, what we generally do, we generally put them under consent agenda. But if someone wants to come and present something, we certainly allow that. And when we send out the agenda, the board can choose to not have that be an action item and put it under consent, and vice versa. If it's under consent, the board can bring it up for discussion. So it's just, I don't think that we necessarily have.
The proclamation is very important to be read. Any proclamation, that's just me personally. Any proclamation, if we take the time, and they're always very well written, and put in a board pack to be read aloud, so that the public can hear, because the child abuse proclamation is very involved, and it explains what it is and what they're trying to do. It's kind of, it's very helpful, it's very educational, and it's also saying that the work that we're doing, gives social services an opportunity to come forward, and we can appreciate all that they do, and it's a very different job. And I'm sure-
Keep in mind, that wasn't a for or against question. And
No,
that's
I
what
know it's not.
that's what I was looking for, is that type of response.
I think the biggest thing is to just bring attention to it. I mean, I wouldn't have known it, didn't come across this.
Yeah.
And,
I'm
and,
in the school.
and interesting enough, through some local government channels too, that same question came up, because I think maybe, I don't-
About it before here.
well, yeah, well, I mean,
What, 3 or 4 months ago, it's like something you just asked,
Why do we do
why
that?
do we do it?
yeah, I don't think we get an overabundance of them, but some localities may get a lot of them. And so there was a question of, do we have a policy for the types of proclamations that we would allow and stuff like
Yeah.
that? Because if everyone, if they get 13, 20 proclamations at one meeting, do you go through them all? So,
And how you decide which ones and who decides? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so that's, I don't, generally, when these have come forward, we've brought them before the board. And again, I don't think that everything comes forward. Everything comes forward that's being requested, but I don't think,
Nobody presents unless they ask.
yeah.
And that realize that we are the highest board in this community. We're here for every citizen, 27,000, and so we should be interested in what.
So a proclamation is a statement to the community, and almost nobody hears it. If we don't have a board meeting with a subdivision, then it's pretty much us.
Any controversy at all.
Yeah, and so I'm just,
If anyone wants to go back and read the board package or archive it, or, I mean, it's always there. I mean,
I'm a procedure-minded person, so I've just been trying to figure out the value for the community and what this government is doing and these types of things.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors proclaim the month of April 2022 as celebrating Children's Month in Fluvanna County in observation of child abuse prevention.
Got a motion made by Ms. Booker, seconded by Ms. Eager. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes 5-0. Next up is B, confirmation of local emergency declaration, Mr. Dahl.
so I'm going to provide a presentation that covers B, C, and D, because they're kind of all interrelated. And
Let me just read all of them.
Yep,
We can
sure.
Get it out there on the page.
sure,
We'll have to do motions separately.
correct.
C, emergency procurement, and the excavation and development contract. And D, emergency procurement, Xylem Dewatering Solutions Incorporated.
All right, so let me go ahead and open it up. So as the board is aware, and the public has seen, some of the public has seen, we experienced, we were notified about a dam breach, a private dam breach, potential dam breach on March 21st, 2022. So kind of how this came about, the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, it's a dam safety and floodplain management division. They inspect dams periodically. There was a private engineering firm that was looking at a dam for a property owner, and it became alarming to them. The engineering firm brought it to the attention of DCR. And this lake, MacGyver Lake, was in the southern region of the county, kind of near Bremo Bluff, maybe about 3/4 of a mile up from Bremo Road. So this lake at the time, and I've got a bunch of pictures too to show you, was estimated. The lake was over 10 acres in size, over 20 feet deep, and was holding more than 60 million gallons of water. Which, if it fully breached, would have put Bremo Road under 3.5 feet of water, and potentially could have affected the Dominion Bremo site operations down there. So kind of the way this came about, DCR was alarmed enough that they contacted the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, VDEM, who in turn alerted Debbie Smith, Fluvanna County's emergency management coordinator, around 2 p.m. on that Monday, that there was an imminent failure of this, and which set off a whole chain of events, and between, county staff and public safety, trying to alert the public, those properties that were near it, just to make sure that although properties were not in kind of harm's way of being flooded necessarily, making sure that people or kids were not going down to the creek area in case the dam gave away. In addition, contacted with VDOT to close Bremo Road because of just some information. I'll show you some information why that was done. So this is just kind of an overhead view of where the dam breach was. So again, it's a little hard to see, but there's more pictures. So this is about the width of the dam. Right here is the extent of it, and here's kind of the lake piece of it. You can see where it goes. And so there was maybe about a 3-foot section of wall kind of holding up the water there. So, they were concerned if water goes up any higher, they were concerned with layers of the dam to kind of peel back, and then ultimately having the water go through that section. And looking at the other side of the dam here too, you can see where the outlet pipe is. You can see there was a lot of residual, ground deteriorating over time. And again, this is just a look at the lake as a whole. So the little star right there is where, and you can kind of barely see, that's where the potential dam breach was. So this is the main part of the lake, and then it goes back up into this tributary here, which this whole area is not supposed to be full of water. Generally, it's generally supposed to be a much smaller lake. So going back to why we kind of moved the way we did, one, we got the information from VDEM and DCR. DCR subsequently provided a flood map of what would happen if that whole dam breached. So I didn't show you the piece of where the dam was coming from, but again, it kind of winds through this Holman's Creek. Holman's Creek goes right here this is Bremo Road right here. And this is the Dominion Power Station. And this is the West Pond. Yes, the West Pond. And just for the public's benefit, there is no contained coal ash in the West Pond. It's been remediated up to this point. And you can see they've got a big barrier around the West Pond that, if from the flood map determination, it was not going to enter that necessarily. But again, there was an unknown of if 60 million gallons of water went releasing through there, what that would do. Again, from a conservative standpoint, they were showing that Bremo Road around that bridge would have been around 3.68 feet underwater. So that would do a lot of damage to a car coming by if a big wall of water came down. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yep.
So just curious, that would have been a moment in time though, right? Meaning that water's not going to sustain. It would have come through, rust through, and
Yep.
in a pretty short amount of time, the 911 would be over as long as the road held up.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example because Yeah, I'll give you a good example, and we'll see some later pictures. You know, once the dam was being pumped down manually, because there was concern of doing a force breach in an area away from the dam, worried that too much water would come down, and then if you let the water down too fast around where the area was breached, you know, when water goes down, some of that dirt kind of falls back, and there was concern if you brought it down too quick that it would fall back and then it would breach quicker.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to kind of go back to what you're saying though, there was a couple big forced breaches in kind of what was the more solid spill area, and I'll show you some pictures. And you know, we were kind of going back down periodically down to Bremo Ridge just to see what the effect was on the water. I mean, it took from even a minuscule amount of water, it took about 15 minutes for it to kind of, you know, slowly, you know, get its way down there. But if, you know, let's just say that whole section breached right where the dam inlet and outlet is, I mean, it's hard to say how long it would take, but no, I mean, it certainly wouldn't be, you know, a 24-hour thing.
Right, it would not last very long.
Right, source of water, then.
But
would be
the
going-
effect would be this.
Yeah.
Anybody on that road is gonna get washed away with gone.
And
If there's a train on the track, there's possibility, because I think that's what the train.
correct, and not sure what it would do to the bridge or the infrastructure or the roadway down there. So to kind of go back to this, so, you know, again, we were notified. So before the county could do any repairs or mitigations, originally it's up to the property owner to do that. Once DCR was talking with the property owner, it was determined that the property owner was not going to fix the situation in the time that DCR wanted. So it went before the governor's office, who then could invoke an executive order to allow the county to start moving forward with remediating the potential failure on its own. And that's a crucial piece of information, because once the governor signed the authorization, that means that the county was going to be reimbursed from the state for all work that's being done in regards to this, you know, from
But it was also, we didn't have a choice. It had to be done.
correct.
Property owners have noticed.
Well, no, but yes. I mean, there's going to be some liens or some remediation or reimbursement that the state's is going to seek after the fact. So from the county standpoint, you know, we're trying to make sure we're doing this. One, that we have strict guidelines that we have to follow from DCR. We can't just go, and we have to be very mindful of the cost of doing it. And two, we want to be mindful of the property owner too, that we're doing it in as a responsible and fiscally, you know, appropriate fashion, because they're going to be on the hook for something at some point. They're going to probably have some type of lien against their property from the state for what it's costing for this to happen. So again, so at around 7:15 p.m. that Monday evening, we got, actually, I was walking down to the dam site with Roger Black, and we got the call that the governor had given that authorization at the time. So with that allowed us to start moving forward. Again, we were making calls ahead of time to set up vendors, but that allowed us to kind of lock in emergency procurement for contractors for excavating and pumping. So by 9:30 p.m. that Monday evening, Handley Excavation and Development, they arrived on the scene with an excavator. And again, there was no, from all the storms in January, there's no clear path to get down there. There was an old logging road, but it probably had 50 to 100 trees covering it. So to get in there quicker, there was a quicker way to go through the woods from a Dominion easement closer to the dam. So that's what the contractor did. And then after the fact, because the kind of the roadway going to the site was wider, then after the fact, they then opened up the roadway and removed all the trees, because the larger equipment had to come through. Going through the Dominion easement where all the power lines are, some of the big equipment couldn't go through there.
Who removed those trees?
The contractor, yeah. I mean, there weren't a lot of trees. They tried to, you know, kind of, you know, yeah, kind of get through there without doing a lot of tree removal to, you know, kind of keep it intact. So again, by midnight on that Monday, the pump, we had one pump that we had procured that was operational. In addition, Dominion Energy were helpful too, that they actually then within the next 24 to 36 hours, they ended up helping to get 2 of their large pumps up to the site too for pumping operations. And, you know, they didn't charge anyone for that. There was some charge for getting it there from an outside contractor, but that was a big help to get 3 pumps on site to start pumping the water down, because there were some different rain events that were coming up as well. So just to kind of look at, you know, how some of the actions took here. So the lake lowering efforts, week 1, again, were by pumps. You can see there's 3 pumps that had their pumps going into the lake. And then this is kind of around the spillway. And then the water was just pushing down. With these 3 pumps going, it could only move about maybe 14 inches of water in a 24-hour period, which from DCR standpoint, that's what they wanted. They wanted to see no more than 2 feet go down a day, because they didn't want the water to lower so quick that it could put some of the earth would fall away. But then after they got a better comfort level after the first week, this is the spillway kind of right here. They opened up the spillway right here with an excavator, and then started letting water out with an excavator through that spillway, which really got the water down in the lake. As you see here, this was the morning after March 21st. This is the top of the dam. You can see there's only about 3 feet of kind of the top of the dam, and you know, it angles down, and this is the lake going back, and these are similar pictures of that same site a week later. Here's the dam breach area, and then here's that same picture looking back towards the end of the lake after about a week of pumping and opening up the spillway. Yep. So the water, so where the dam is, there's a little creek, Holman's Creek, that goes down there. So the water went down the spillway into the Holman's Creek. Yeah. Yeah. And again, they didn't want to let too much out, because again, concern with erosion and flooding downstream and stuff as well. So that's why it had to be a kind of a, you know, somewhat of a slow process. So on April 1st, DCR determined that the imminent threat was over. As you can see here, most of the water in the lake has been down to a good level. You can see that's the breach in the dam of that section of dam. As of today, and even after looking at this picture, the lake has mostly been drained, and there's kind of an existing creek channel that's been diverted into that previous spillway. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to dry out this dam area a little bit more so they can start excavating, because it's just really sloppy and muddy, and they've had some problems with excavators getting close to the edge and sinking down. So they're trying to dry everything out. So to kind of get through this, once it's dry and they can start moving forward with it, it's anticipated to take another 2 weeks to kind of do the final decommissioning. And what the decommissioning is from DCR, they want to basically open up a 20-foot section right here, and then it's got to be cut back by about a 3-to-1 ratio on both sides. So all that's going to be completely removed. You know, it's hard to say. So I didn't show some pictures, but we had some pretty energetic beavers that did a lot of work down there. Even when we opened up some of the breaches one day, the next morning there was a mini beaver dam set up the next morning. Yeah, so I think, I mean, again, this was built, you know, from. Yeah, you're not, you know, like I said, one, having the trees growing on the dam is a no-no. One, any debris that gets in, or any, you know, thing that fills up the actual inlet pipe. So, because what happens is there's an inlet pipe in here. So once that gets filled up, the water just keeps on creeping up above that inlet pipe. In addition, where the spillway was, beavers were building a dam in the spillway. So the water just kept on getting higher and higher and higher. That's why it was getting so close to the edge of going over where the breach area was.
So is there any type of record of ponds? A listing?
Yeah, there is, and from this, that's kind of the next thing is to make sure, I mean, again, the authority of this falls on DCR. So it was said that there's, I think, close to 1,800 private lakes, dams in the Commonwealth. And I think there was 18 in Fluvanna or more. I think there was more than that, probably more than that.
Yeah. I
Ma-
don't
ma-
call my water, lake, we call it a pond, but boy,
Yeah, I don't know. This was called MacGyver Lake. So I don't know what
I'm just wondering anything that has a dam, if there was record of it.
there should be. I mean, again, technically it's supposed to be, there's
It's
an,
under 300 feet long. Mr. Black explained to me one time.
Yep.
From the
From
beginning
the dam to
to
the,
the exit point.
Yeah.
It's under 300 feet, you don't have to register.
even with the county?
Don't ask me to, Mr. Black.
I don't think from the county,
I think it's state.
yeah, the state has a lot of the oversight for this.
Okay.
Now, if there's probably if it's affecting a large area, the county would be involved from a erosion and sediment standpoint.
It's just, I grew up here. I've never known this was here and it's huge. And I just wonder
Trust
how
me.
many of these others are.
I got a phone call from Mr. Dahl about 3:30. Oh, no, about 3 o'clock.
Yep.
And I was on the school bus. I stopped the bus and said, can't talk right now. I'll call you as soon as I get my last kid on. So I finished, and as soon as we got off the phone, I started calling anybody I knew who grew up in Bremo, saying, how do we get to this thing? Where is it?
Because that was a problem. I mean, it's way back in there. There was no main roads to get to it. I mean,
No easy path.
like
I could see some crimes being solved by this thing. Things show up in the bottom of that.
We think we're gonna find Jimmy.
I'm gonna have this back, I might look at my day.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mr. Black's kind of been the man on the ground. There was a couple nights Mr. Black stayed overnight. The first night when we were pumping, because you had to keep the pumping operations going, and plus we're using Dominion's pumps, making sure they're not running out of gas, burning out the big pumps. And plus, if the water goes, want to make sure that we alert people. So there was a couple times where he did some overnight shifts there. So like I said, he's been a tremendous help on all this. So
We can have him come one day and talk to us.
Yep.
But he can tell you exactly. It's over 300 feet.
Because I remember one time, Ron had divers to go in. Check the overflow, whatever. That side, and then, oh, that's the last time, we running into it.
yeah.
So this is really bad.
Fight for their metals,
Yeah.
rough.
Well, yeah, there was some old galvanized pipes that were just completely corroded. I mean, they were just gone.
And does the DCR, is there a system where they check and it must not be?
Well-
If it's on the system, even if it's on their radar, where they're going in and making sure there's some preventive maintenance.
What they're supposed to be from a private, and I don't know the size, but private dam property owners that have dams are supposed to have an engineer come out and inspect it. It says between 1 and 6 years, and that's supposed to be submitted to DCR. I don't know when DCR
I
had been.
just wonder because it fell back on us.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering I don't want to regulate people's property any more than.
The biggest reason it fell back on us is because they basically told us, deal with it and we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And I think we have some pond specialists in the area through the extension agency. I've asked them. So they would come out and look at it.
It seems to me that this should be part of, a learning experience that could be added to the hazard mitigation.
Yep.
Could have been a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
And then have response happen, and then be, identifying the ponds that are, or dams that are of a size that might be threatened would be part of that process. And then, getting DCR to provide us a record of, if they're supposed to do it within 1 to 5 years of those actual records that they've done it, I think that puts them to task. Because this was lucky, right?
Oh, yeah.
We got very lucky here that there was something else going on and somebody showed up.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, if they didn't have an engineer coming out to take a look or inspect this, because again, the
Property owner asked for it, right?
yeah, the property owner asked for it, but the property owner doesn't live on the property. It's just, and doesn't live in the area. And so if that hadn't been done, I mean, again, the beavers were damming up the spillway area. And so if they kept on doing that and the water would have, yeah, if they would have pushed through if the water would have pushed through where the breach was by the dam, that would have been a lot of water flowing through there at one time.
I just don't understand how and this is a later question in your presentation. I just don't understand how this all comes on us, other than the immediate protect the citizens. But I don't know how come, I'm having a hard time figuring out how come DCR isn't running with this themselves from there. Why are we dealing with this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess because it's in the county and we deal with, we deal with emergencies in our county. That's the only thing I can come up with. And again, you know, the county declared a local emergency because of this. And, you know, with that kind of put some protection in place and then kind of coincides with the state kind of invoking and that it's an emergency and imminent threat as well too. So again, this is just the Code of Virginia that, you know, kind of declares, you know, what can be done for declaring a local emergency. And then, you know, obviously we also did an emergency procurement because, you know, we called a bunch of contractors, you know, up until we knew when we were going to get the authorization. But at the end of the day, we had to get the quickest contractor out there that had availability and Mr. Pelican with Kurt Pelican, I think he was a Fluvanna graduate too. With Hanley Excavation, he like I said, he was out there and he's been on the job. Yeah.
Henley does a lot of response.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, we actually called another contractor and a larger contractor, and they referred us to Hanley because they've done a lot of pond work and stuff like that, both building and kind of decommissioning and fixing. No, oh no, it was a large company in Louisa. No, first name's Kurt. Yeah, he knows Isaac. So happy to answer any questions that the board has. Again, we've got three motions. One's for approving the local declaration, and then the two others are for the actual contract, the emergency procurements.
I'll agree with you. You've got a good question. Why was it dumped on us? Trust me, that's the first thing I asked him. He goes, I don't know, but the governor just signed an executive order and we've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
And okay, then.
I understand in the immediate, whatever it
Right.
takes to get somebody there. But we're now after that. So what does it do for us to say that it was gosh, what are we saying that it's emergency declaration? What is that? Why are we making it officially an emergency declaration?
You have to do that because the emergency manager, Mr. Dahl, only has authority on behalf of the county to the extent that it's ratified by this board. That's what you're doing, is ratifying what he did.
Need to be reimbursed
By the state?
Yeah.
by the state, I believe.
Well, I mean, the governor's authorization, it invokes it, but declaring the local emergency with the efforts that we had to go through. One, we had to close Bremo Road, you know, going to VDOT and getting VDOT just to close a road. I mean, there was lots of questions. We had to call CSX because, you know, that goes right down. And so there's a lot of things in play to notify the appropriate parties and make sure that we've got the proper mitigation measures in place. So
I'm just mean, and I understand, I think, but just the fact that it's post-event, making a proclamation that something was in 911, and I thought it was so we could get the funding. I'm just trying to figure out.
No, it's so he can exercise his authority. He doesn't have authority without your ratification.
But he's already done it though, right?
Yes, he has, and it's happened sometimes that the county administrator takes an action without the board's approval, and the board doesn't approve it.
yeah,
and the county administrator is paying for
I see. So it's a post-event covering
it.
basis.
It's a ratification. of-
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't say anything until after this snow's going
So
down.
it's.
Yeah, I mean,
In layman's
You
terms.
didn't have time to get to.
Correct.
In layman's terms,
Yeah.
it's a post-event, the board saying, we like what you did. we
Yeah.
agree with it," right?
Well, I guess you could put it.
I mean, I guess, yeah,
You
that's,
did what had to be done.
yeah, and again,
You just gotta
normally,
understand.
when those events occur, I usually notify the chair of the board too, so.
This happens in a number of different contexts where the board meets twice a month and the county administrator's got to do something right now.
I know a lot of people, the only fussing and hammer was why are we getting in the middle of it? And my response was, we weren't given a choice.
Yeah,
We were
basically.
basically told we had to deal with this.
And
Now.
Well, the
this is
fraction-
our county, and we're protecting our citizens.
The practical matter is that probably DCR wouldn't have been able to do it as quickly as we did.
Yeah.
I looked at the Google map of this and you have to see this from the air. You can't find it.
Correct.
I mean, Dominion had one of their helicopters fly out and they had a drone fly over the whole thing. I mean, Sheriff Hess, I mean, originally when this happened, no one kind of knew Sheriff Hess physically drove out to the lake with some of his deputies to try and figure out a way to get to it. I mean, it was a little bit of a maze to get into the place originally. So,
So we stepped up, we did what we're supposed to, but
Yeah.
DCR is gonna make us whole.
yes,
Correct.
yep,
That's a short way.
yep.
I move the board of supervisors confirm the decision to declare a local emergency effective March 21st, 2022 in response to the emergency actions taken for the potential failure of the MacGyver lake dam.
Second,
Second.
motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mrs. Eager, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, chair votes aye, now the motion proceed.
I move the board of supervisors approve emergency procurement contract between Fluvanna County and the excavation and development LLC for the MacGyver Lake Dam remediation as authorized by the governor of Virginia with all costs reimbursed by the Commonwealth of Virginia, subject to reasonable modifications approved by the county administrator and the county attorney to such agreement, and further authorize the county administrator to approve and if necessary execute such agreement subject to the county attorney approval as to form.
Second,
Second.
motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mrs. Eager, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, chair votes aye, motion passed 5-0. D,
I move the board of supervisors approve the emergency procurements contract between Fluvanna County and Silent Water Solutions, Inc. for the MacGyver Lake Dam remediation as authorized by the governor of Virginia with all costs reimbursed by the Commonwealth of Virginia, subject to reasonable modifications approved by the county administrator and the county attorney to such agreement, and further authorize the county administrator to approve and if necessary, execute such agreement subject to county attorney's approval as to form.
Second.
motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mrs. Eager, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, chair votes aye, motion passes 5-0. Next up is E, Fork Union Commons Park proper consideration, Mr. Dahl.
So again, the board authorized staff to submit an application for rezoning the three parcels that we purchased in the Fork Union Commerce Park. Application was submitted to the planning department, I believe, February 28th. The technical review committee met on March 10th to discuss the rezoning. The planning commission will have the rezoning application before them on April 12th. And so as part of the rezoning, at times, the board may want to either leave all the uses in play, or they may want to proffer out uses that they don't want to see. So that's come up with other applicants, or there may be things that don't make sense to do. So staff has provided some recommendations for the board's consideration, but the board can completely change what's there. And I'll just make one note that we made a little shift in something here, getting rid of where it said indoor shooting ranges under the by right use and excluding outdoor shooting ranges under special use permit. I mean, if you remember, if whatever is under by right use, then whoever comes in can do that use. Now, again, we've got a little bit more control because this is a county-owned park, but at some point we're going to need to subdivide it and, kind of start having parcels for sale. So we want to make sure that we're only letting uses come into that park that we want. In addition, for the special use piece too, again, we can proffer out certain uses, but again, ultimately, any special use permit, the board's gonna ultimately have to approve anyway. So that one's a little different. So for this one, initially from the by right use, we recommended deleting or excluding self-storage facilities and car washes. One, we got a lot of self-storage facilities. I'm not sure that's the best use of it. And then also car washes, because they use a lot of water, and currently we don't have a lot of water capacity down there as it is. And not sure that's the best use for a car wash, but again, that's just a consideration. And then from an industrial use, a solid waste collection facility. And then under special use permit uses, excluding out amusements, commercial and manufactured home sales, and then shooting ranges outdoors, and then solid waste material recovery facilities. Those are just some initial staff recommendations, but again, the board can completely change what they want. So this list here shows all of the uses permitted by right. So again, you know, we want a letter to go to the planning commission as they're considering the rezoning. So in addition to what staff put forward, are there any additional uses that the board would want to proffer out, or what we recommended? Is that satisfactory? No, a car wash would be excluded as a by right use.
Okay, so but this page is just listing what it is.
Yeah, this page just lists all the uses that you can have. And then we recommended pulling out the car wash one, the car wash and the where is it here? The solid waste collection facility. And again, going back, we originally deleted shooting ranges indoors, but maybe we delete that. I don't think we want to. It's indoors, and so that's a board decision. So again, you know, sometimes it's good to have things excluded or proffered out that you don't want to see, but
I don't know why we wouldn't want an indoor shooting range.
No, that's saying we can have one.
yes, yeah. It's literally a half mile down the road, but that's up to the board.
Anyone else? Okay. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, let me make one observation. You are doing this, you wouldn't do this in a normal case. You're doing it because the county is the owner. So you are preparing the proposal for the planning commission's consideration and your consideration for the rezoning. This is not necessarily what it's going to end up looking like. You could change your mind,
Yeah.
to add or subtract things.
When it comes back to you.
Just in case, just for the public's benefit, don't think this is necessarily locked in stone when you vote today.
All right. We have a motion.
And so just to make sure, I'm sorry, Mr. Sheridan, just to make sure, so on this page here is what's on here, is that the only thing that the board wants to exclude or proffer out?
It's all I see right now.
It's too early to tell.
Yeah.
You know, we've had like lumber yards and complaints about those things as far as affecting neighbors, but not a lot of neighbors there, not a lot of businesses there.
Yeah, and again, I mean, so this list right here, I mean, this is everything. So if someone comes in and it's by right, they can do it. Now, this list here, the special use permits, I don't necessarily think it's needed for the board to potentially proffer out some of this stuff, unless there's something you just absolutely know you don't want down there. Because again, a special use permit has to come back to the board anyway. So if the board's fine with what's being proposed, we would put the letter going forward to the planning commission, proffering out self-storage facilities and car washes, and then solid waste collection facilities under by right use, and then proffering out amusements, commercial manufactured home sales, and shooting ranges outdoors, and then solid waste material recovery facilities. So if that's what the board wants, I think what we could do with the motion is basically make the motion and say as presented in the staff's presentation. Fred, is that correct?
That'd be fine.
All right, someone will make a motion.
I know the board of supervisors approved following excluded land uses as property in the rezoning application.
Motion made by Mr. Booker, and seconded by Mr. O'Brien. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Quick question.
Mhm.
I always thought the county did not have to go through the same processes that an individual would when it's on county property. An example would be when we built the concession stand over here on the girls softball field. We didn't have to get the same approvals because the county owned the property and said it was okay to do it. Does the county have to go through always the same processes?
In order to amend zoning, that happens.
Okay,
Now, the zoning doesn't apply to the county. But the county's putting this zoning in place
I see.
in order to market.
So we can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Thank
Yeah, I mean, we could not charge ourselves for a building permit if we're building something, something of that matter, but we're still gonna, go through and inspect and make sure that it's being built to
I got
a
you.
good standard. So, yeah.
All right. Next is F. In presentations, comprehensive plan update timeline, Mr. Miles.
Being Chairman, members of the board, here tonight to give you an update on the comprehensive plan process as we are here in 2022.
Oops, sorry.
So this is the current adopted 2015 comprehensive plan map. And notice that the light green area that's in the center and corners of the map, that's rural residential, and we're proposing in this current comp plan amendment process to eliminate the rural residential area, to just have community planning areas that are the purple fuchsia color, and then the remaining would be rural preservation.
Will you remind us what rural residential means? Because we were a little unclear, if you remember.
Yeah, the
at
open
thing at the
house.
library.
Yeah, so in 2000, the county adopted the 2000 comprehensive plan. And Eric, can you go back? I'm sorry to the map before. So the intent of the rural residential was to allow limited residential uses in those areas. And in the dark green areas, rural preservation, you wouldn't have hardly any except like family divisions, your own property divisions, that kind of thing. So,
Which means, I'm sorry, but in the dark green areas, you wouldn't even have by right? Is that right?
no, in the dark green area, you still have by right land divisions, minor subdivisions, 2-acre lots, 10-acre parcels, all that.
Okay.
You'd still have, that's what I was trying to say, but there would be limited rural clustering going on in the residential areas. And basically, so like for instance, around Palmyra, in the village of Palmyra, you would have rural clustering occurring as opposed to a full large subdivision all around. You would just do clustering. And so in the last basically 20 years or so, that's not been occurring, where people would be doing rural clustering outside of the village area. Where they're doing it, they're doing it where water and sewer is around the lake. So, and that's been the pattern as to what we've done and tracked and everything in the development activity report for at least 10, 15 years now.
Well, there's some people have tried to do it, then they won't get on that enough work time.
Yes, we had a case a year and a half ago, correct?
Oh, so I'm thinking more back 5 years ago.
Yeah,
At the
and
golf course.
right, and so, and then the project up at Camp Friendship, Walker's Ridge, Exactly, so when that was rezoned, and that was at the time when the Palmyra village was really large and was almost kind of covered over. So the goal, if you can go to the next one, Mr. Gold. So the goal is to really make a clear distinction between, are you in a planning area or are you in a rural conservation area? And with the rural residential, classification and a lot of, rezonings of rural cluster subdivision requests, it's been confusing to folks that, like, for instance, the Ballinger Bluff property was half in the rural residential and half in the rural preservation. In those kind of planning areas. So it was hard for us to determine, are you really rural clustering, or are you building a residential subdivision? So, and working in the last, year or so with the planning commission, we brought that idea up during the, pandemic, and talking to Chair Viv and a lot of the cases that have come through, that was the trend, and we kind of tracked it.
Can you give examples of that?
Examples of,
Of where that confusion played a role, or like what's actually changing by doing this? I don't know.
well, by changing it to rural preservation, we're trying to encourage people to do the rural clustering in the rural preservation area, not in the Urbana Planning District, CPA area.
I understand what the effect of this is going to be, though. Don't think that if you adopt this map and load the old one, that it's going to change the by right uses or by right activities like subdivisions. They're going to be governed by the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. What this is going to guide is the county's actions, including things like extension of utilities and development of roads and things like that. So if you took the situation exactly as it is with existing zoning and existing subdivision regulations and changed the old map for this new map, and somebody came in and wanted a by right subdivision in the dark blue, dark green area, it wouldn't change it. Because what a developer could do, what a landowner can do is defined by what's permitted in the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. So if you wanted to make a substantial change, what you'd have to do is amend the ordinances to reflect this idea.
Which is outside of the comp plan.
Right.
Correct.
So,
So what is, so I guess I don't understand what's actually changing. You're saying nothing's changing.
no,
What is changing?
nothing is immediately changing. This is designed, so for example, if you had somebody come in and wanted to rezone a property that's in the light, what's now in the light green becomes in the dark green, there would be a consideration that you don't want that kind of that intense development in the green area. You want it to go in the pink area.
Correct, yeah, so we're.
If he comes in with a subdivision, and Ballinger Bluff is a good example, where a lot of people didn't like that subdivision, but the developer had a right to develop it under the subdivision ordinance.
But it still has that right under this,
He would, yes.
right? So what's the difference?
Well,
Is it like a
You would-
difference in vision statement kind of? Or,
well,
and our vision is that you wouldn't have it in the lighter green areas, but they still have the rights to, or?
No, it's really the key aspect in the planning process of what we're trying to do is direct people into CBAs.
So
We want to encourage people to be in areas with water and sewer, office, commercial, industrial, some additional residential. So, but the key part of this comprehensive plan is what we're trying to do, and not just in the Zion, which I'll explain in a little bit, not just in Zion Crossroads, but also in Fort Union and in other parts of the county.
but the point is, what the effect of this is to guide the legislative bodies, the county, the
Planning
board and
commission.
Planning commission, but planning commission's recommendation,
Yeah.
it's really the board's decision, what you want to do. You could use it to be, and I like to turn the microphone off when I say this because it's probably the most controversial thing you could do. But you could be very aggressive and say, we're going to amend everything into green to permit no subdivision less than 50 acres. You could do that. And that would be the way you would use this. So that you,
Can't
if
do
somebody
that
came
if it
in,
was under the previous map, you could not do that.
Yes.
no, you can do it, but the previous map wasn't as clear that you couldn't do that.
This just provides a little more clarity of where are the
Policy
areas,
statement.
where are the areas you want to see growth? Where are the areas maybe you want to see less intense
Again,
growth?
it's a visual vision statement.
Yeah, I mean,
So here's what we'd like to promote.
Well, and I agree, but I thought I heard a minute ago that, yeah, we want the subdivisions to go into green. And that's when I kind of. Something, did I did not?
Cluster.
I didn't hear that.
Rural cluster subdivisions, right now, rural cluster subdivisions can go in the purple or the green. Well, it would be better for the rural cluster subdivisions to not go in the community planning areas.
There again, the issue is, if it's in the purple and it's zone A1, they can have rural type divisions. They're bound by the rural restrictions, so the density is lower and things like that. But you wouldn't have a rural cluster subdivision in there. If you did this, if it was zoned something different.
Instead of having 3/4 of the land remain open, because there's water and sewer there, you fill up the whole thing.
Well, we have cluster subdivisions in all our districts. So you could, for example, have somebody come in somewhere in the purple and say, I want to have a cluster subdivision, but I want to rezone it R1 because I've got sewer and water. So I want to have an R1 cluster subdivision. If it's in the pink area, hypothetically, that would be appropriate, but it wouldn't be appropriate in the green area.
So the key thing is we're changing the comprehensive plan, and as Mr. Payne said, later, after the adoption of the comprehensive plan, you have to look at the zoning and subdivision ordinances and make clarifications and statements in there of.
And then let me pause one thing. On this map, this is what's being proposed by staff. And again, this could totally change. And again, without getting too deep in, this is more of kind of the timeline update of what's going to be happening in the next, 6 months with the comp plan. But, that's really for the board's input, for the public's input, for these committees' input. Is this is what staff has proposed, but is this what the public wants? Is this what the planning commission wants? Is this what the board wants? And so there's lots of time to change this. Maybe this is what they want. Maybe we want smaller CPAs. Maybe we want larger CPAs. Maybe we want to stay with this, but
I still am confused as to
Can
how it changed.
from what we have right now, can you take this map and place every minor subdivision and subdivision on this map, where there are some of them in the wrong spot, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the wrong spot.
I mean, in the rural preservation area, we have house subdivisions that are in there that shouldn't be in there.
Well, the clusters.
they're clustered.
They can.
Yeah.
Cluster subdivisions, rural clusters were intended to be in the rural.
Yeah, but I know before, when I got on board earlier, they could plot every subdivision, minor subdivision on the map, and you knew exactly whether they were in rural preservation. whether they were in
Oh, yeah, we-
I see what you're saying, Mrs. Booker.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
Well, we've
Okay.
done it, we did it in the development activity report about a year or two ago.
That's too long, I know.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
That's okay, but that brings up a very good point. What we want to do in May is the next, as I kind of go through this, the next thing that we're going to be doing is talking about rural crossroads areas and rural preservation and the rural clustering that we've been talking about. But the next thing we're going to do is try to show you maps in different colors of where subdivisions are in areas that extend bus routes, there's other infrastructure things that when you don't cluster and put these subdivisions near other populated areas, it causes longer fire call delay response. So there's a lot of other things that are predicated on it. So, but we do have a lot of that information. Jason Overstreet did that, and we're going to update that in the demographic section.
I know we want to move on, but just can you give me one example of what I could do in the light green area that I could no longer do?
Nothing.
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 So
So it's just a matter of
No,
color.
It's
well,
nothing,
it's not just a matter of color.
nothing, as
It's to
long,
make the purple CPAs more attractive.
it's nothing,
How
as-
are they less attractive?
Right now.
Because we didn't follow RCPA guidelines anyhow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
so I mean, that's.
Well,
that's an ordinance, Mr. Payne said that's an ordinance thing, but we're trying to let everyone know we're doing a comp plan first and then following the ordinance changes. remember the teeth of the zoning ordinance.
I have to insert, we did follow our CPA guidelines, but that's a whole other
I mean,
subject.
you know,
Yeah.
yes and no, it depends on how you read.
Yeah,
right.
Okay,
Right?
we gotta get the closed session. And then come back out.
So anyway, like I said, obviously there, we could talk about comp plan and the lots of changes here for a long time.
Yeah, so, the key thing is that, you know, we do have a lot of the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, plans that are done, the rural long-range transportation plan for 2018. It's been completed, and there's numerous things, including the Colonial Circle roundabout, that have been implemented already. But to keep in mind that we have those available, and as we create the comp plan, we'll put parts of those in for the planning commission and board to consider. The same thing with the regional housing plan that just got adopted in August of 2021. That was about a 2-year process to be created, but even about a 5-year process that the county was involved with since 2017. So, and then that adopted in 2021.
Whose plan was that?
I'm sorry?
Whose plan was that the back to the housing?
That's the Regional Housing Partnerships Plan that we're at
TJPDC.
chapter 4 of that, yes,
Of the TJPDC.
of the TJPDC.
Yeah, they did a regional piece and then they focus specifically on each locality.
And
That
I've read it. I
yeah.
was just trying to.
Yeah.
make sure that's what we're-
Yep.
And the key about that is that you want to get people, when we go to the, Richmond for lobbying efforts, we lobby as a region and not individuals.
Or sometimes we do.
There's other things in there that we can consider.
And that can be modified as
That
well.
can be modified as well. So the key thing like we're talking about here is the main thing that you all as a board control and do is future land use. So the most public input that we're trying to gain in the open houses and other outreach approaches is to get how does the local land use, how do we want to have that created? And one of the things we're trying to talk about next is rural crossroads areas. To, as part of rural preservation, but also have rural business and other things where people can go have services and not drive to nature.
And when you think of a rural crossroad, you think of like a very mini CPA, like maybe like by the Cunningham Market or like by where the, yeah, you could have like a little miniature kind of, you know, plain growth
Kent
area.
Store, Kent Store, Cunningham, Troy Market.
Not like this big thing, but like,
Yeah. So these were some of the March 10th open house discussions. I'm sorry, this is the groups that have been set up, meet monthly. We'll start next Thursday. The rural preservation is Mr. Overton McGee, Kathy Swenson Miller, Susie Morris, Marvin Moss, and Mr. Gibson, the Worship, the folks that are appointed on that. We'll be doing that April, May, and June at each open house. TJPDC staff, the county and Louisa, we're all currently on the Zion Crossroads stakeholders group. But we also, the planning commission wanted to add some residents, Josh Fowler, Steve Herquitz, the retired Illinois manager, Andy Sorrell, our previous senior planner, lives here in the county, and Steve Smith. So one quick thing to let you all know, we were in a meeting today for the VDOT open house that Louisa is basically going to have that we're a part of. It's Tuesday, April 19th, up in the Spring Creek Clubhouse, and it's 2 sessions, 3:30 to 5 and 5:30 to 7. We just met as planning staff and VDOT on that today. So that's in about a little less than 2 weeks. And the last group is the Historic Preservation Advisory Group. Once we finish our open house events and kind of go into the summer and the early fall, these are the residents that were selected on Fluvanna, Judith Mickelson, Marvin Moss, and Mr. Moss is on both rural preservation and historic preservation, Deborah Murdoch and Hayden Parrish. And they would look at some additional historically significant projects that basically the Historical Society and other groups have brought up in the last 5 years. Now here's where we had some of the comments that occurred at the open house on March 10th. we see that there's a real need or interest to revitalize areas, the Palmyra Main Street area, and want to be more of a true tourist destination. Or eventually new shops and stores would come in there once we move out of the complex. That's there now. Then we also, in really in the last 6 months or so, have seen an increase or focus on the 14 Village commercial area with some basic shops, restaurants and services on Route 15. And we've been doing some work with VDOT there as well for streetscaping and sidewalk restriping and things like that. On crosswalk. Excuse me. But as you saw earlier with the proffer information, we wanted to start focusing on the 14 e-commerce part for economic development growth. So we see the planned water and other sewer improvements in that area, real important. And then we'll continue to promote, of course, design crossroads area. There's a lot of transportation work going on right now, and the water sewer infrastructure will be done soon. So the attendees did agree with kind of removing the rural residential, make it one preservation area to be a stronger approach. They were interested in looking at some of the older stores to be reused, like what's happening to Watermark, Q and now to Mary's, that kind of market. And then just basically the main theme, of course, was no major developments occurring in the rural preservation area. So those are some of the comments.
But to note, no major developments could occur without water and sewer.
Correct. So we're hoping development follows the new water and sewer lines. Yes. And then you all have this, and I know it's real small on the screen. We have handouts in the back, and you all have it in your packet. But that's the basic. I think Mrs. Booker, you asked want to show about getting a timeline. So that's kind of our overall timeline to have benchmarks and dates that we can do. And of course, our planning staff are interested in working with you all on for the supervisor treat for comp plan in a couple of Saturdays. But that's the schedule there for individuals to know that the open house sessions and the group work will be done simultaneously. It just helps us with staffing. And then as we go into the summer and the early fall, and everything is the last slide.
So in coming to some of these open houses, again, in the library, we've got the big partition. So the residents will kind of be working on stuff, but then the public can still come into the other side, ask questions, give feedback and all that stuff throughout those open houses.
Yeah, the GIS, Jason and John Michael on planning and GIS will be up front assisting people like we did last time. And then the back portion by the kitchenette area will be back in there working, and then have some of those same people who want to come out from 6:30 to 7 and provide comments. So, but we do have the flyers and handouts. We've been trying to get additional people to come to the events, and like I said, there's also the website area that they can come and provide us information.
And again, this is kind of the framework, if the board or if the planning commission, if we see maybe we need to do another date at some point, maybe on a different day, or if the board wants another update throughout the process at some point in the summer because they have an interest in something, we'll certainly kind of fit some of that stuff in as we go.
So you have some extra one of these.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Yes, the flyer will get out. The other one's kind of more, anyone can use it, but the main flyer, the first one is.
just curious, in the discussion around rural preservation and rural residential, was any, thought given to the fact that your water and sewer lines are likely to expand outside of CPA zones? And, how is that going to change over the course of years?
They are, and we're actually in some areas proposing to expand a little bit of the CPAs because of that in this process. And we're going to propose that.
But the expansion of a water line is something that has to, that you can regulate under the comprehensive plan.
That you can,
Can.
right, but if you're saying, if on the one hand you're saying you're expanding the water line, but you've limited where you can put in growth, but, essentially eliminating rural residential and say this is rural preservation now. That falls outside of that line now, even though the line's expanded. So unless you grow your CPA zone in order to meet where that is, you've essentially limited the uses to that land.
That's right, and I think that's what the staff, one of the things staff had in mind when they did the Zion's area, is it sort of follows
Yeah.
the
So
water.
just real quick, we did, prior to the pandemic starting and everything, we had Dewberry doing the water and wastewater master plan. So we actually did future 20, 30 years where everything in the CPAs, because where that can be done. So that's coming to you all soon, and that's where we're trying to say that we want everything to match up and mesh together.
So
So
you expanded, because it's not on the map, you've expanded the Zion's Crossroads area, you've
Zion's
expanded
Crossroads,
the Lake Monticello area, and you've expanded the Fort Union area.
we haven't expanded the area of the Ravenna planning district with parcels that could be in larger shopping center size. Areas that are currently not, we want to show those as insets and show where certain areas.
Yeah, around the Rivanna, a lot of it's already kind of,
So,
it's already kind of
It's pretty
there.
big, I
It's
get
pretty
that.
big
It's
as
kind
it
of
is.
like Rivanna's at the Lake
Yeah,
Monticello,
yeah, yeah.
And then Columbia, was Columbia expanded too?
we did not. We
No,
actually
'cause-
looked at-
Yeah, we don't, I mean, right now, we don't have a whole lot of water and sewer infrastructure planned for down there. I mean, there's a little, Aqua's got a small system down there and that's something we certainly want to look at for the future. But, I think probably more in the immediate future, we see Zion's Crossroads, the Fork Union area, and maybe the Palmyra area. In the Rivanna area, around Lake Monticello, that's already occurring, that they already have water, sewer, that's already occurring. But I see those three other areas as probably being the areas that need more focus and more immediate attention.
That's all I have for you, but in the meantime, please just call or email me and I'd like to update you all on how progress is going and see you on a couple Saturdays to go over and watch out for two.
Just have a couple things I want to say on this. One, I've talked to a couple of committee members over the past days on multiple committees, and they're feeling like they don't even know yet what they're going to do. And I understand time. I like the flow chart aspect of this. Just feel like there's still a lot of gray area, and thank y'all for putting this schedule and chart together. I feel like there's a lot of gray area, understanding it's a marathon, not a sprint, of what's happening when and how it comes about. And I'm just trying to figure out, as they are, these pieces. Maybe when they'll start having more meetings, they'll understand what their role is. But like, we have nothing to, I guess, to hand over to the committee members to say, here's what your committee does and here's what you'll be doing. Do we? Or
Yeah, no, we'll be doing that. They'll be receiving their material.
Please step the microphone.
so it doesn't exist yet, though, right?
No, it exists. We actually we've been working with some of the folks on those committees.
Okay.
To do some of that information. So, but no, we have the materials. What we're trying to do is provide to them. Remember, as I kind of said in the meeting, we're not changing a lot in the comp plan, except certain things with land use and infusing in the infrastructure and transportation changes. We're, as a county, the comprehensive plan is in very good shape, and we're just trying to enhance it.
But I will say, there's a lot of people with real concerns about what the comprehensive plan spells out and designs now and allows. And so there's a notable amount of people that want to see some change and effect on that.
Well, I mean, the comp plan's out there and so I guess if those individuals are on those individual plans, I mean, certainly during the committee sessions, they can bring those concerns forward and it's not, I mean, yes, the comp plan's done and it's not proposed to have a major rewrite, a complete rewrite, but I think if the committee sees a lot of changes that they want and it's brought forward to the board and the planning commission, doesn't mean some things can't be changed.
So let's say there was a little bit to be done, and then another time there's a lot to be done. If the committees are going to be there, either way, then there would be a prescribed, here's what your tasks are, right? Whether there's a whole lot to be done or a little bit to be done, if we're always gonna have these committees, every time we visit the comprehensive plan, then the role of the committees won't change whether it's big or small.
Now, the role of the committee is, I think you're talking about the advisory group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is advisory.
Right.
It's for them, the members of that, to make suggestions as to changes that ought to be made or ought not to be made.
Yeah.
They don't have any statutory standing.
I understand.
The planning commission does, but the advisory groups are purely, you're sort of taking a poll of people in the room and saying, what do y'all think about this?
And plus the planning commission selected some of them based upon some of their resumes and their background and kind of appointed them or nominated them to certain committees that maybe fit, their professional expertise.
The
or
idea that the planning commission expressed was, and Mrs. Eager can correct me if I'm misstating this, was we have a bunch of volunteers here who have asked to be on these advisory groups. And what we want to do is allocate them the way we think they would be most useful to us in
advising.
designing these issues, designing the solutions to these issues.
But the role of the advisory committees, be it now or 5 years from now, is gonna be the same.
No,
right?
not necessarily, because we've never had an advisory group like this.
Oh, we haven't. I didn't know.
And it has no statutory standing.
Yeah.
This is purely, in some sense, it's debatable whether we should have these districts, these groups, because they certainly give certain people more immediate access to the planning commission and board than it does others. Some might argue that, and I'm not espousing this one way or the other, but some might argue you're giving special consideration to this guy. I don't agree with him. You shouldn't do that. We ought to both stand up at the meetings and give you. So don't think this is an inherent part of the system. It's not.
When we appoint people to committees all the time.
So, Mr. Kershaw, let me kind of summarize it this way. The way that comprehensive plans are made today, in today's world now, it's not a lot of text and information and research that's shown in the comprehensive plan. It's actually very graphically designed and laid out so that you can see certain areas of an intersection, and that's what you want, the office, commercial, residential. So, and I think some of the people who voice questions, maybe have questions or concerns, is that we're taking away some of the language that they have. Okay, that it helps, but what we're trying to do is put that information more graphically, and as Mrs. Booker brought up, we're gonna show folks that these things are happening and we wanna correct them and make things better. So we're trying to do it more graphically, and I think the folks really like the text that's also in it. So that's kind of where we're at, and we've looked and we've done this through all the ones.
Do we feel like we have put into print what the role of each of these, not committees, I'm sorry, what you call them?
Advisory.
Groups, of what their role is?
Well, we're gonna be doing that Thursday night with them, starting off that. The packet material we're gonna actually hand it out Tuesday night at the planning commission, so that the planning commission knows before they start, as we told Mr. Bibb and the others, that's what's gonna be on that plate for Thursday night, so that they can go forward, and then they'll continue to get that information. And then actually, some of the folks who sit on the committees and advisory groups have talked about working in between the time in the library themselves, so, which is up to them, I mean, as we're citizens, residents.
So I don't want to belabor this, but I'm telling you, there's people, sorry, that's, I don't mean that disrespectful. There are people who are trying to figure out what their role is. We created these advisory groups. It sounds like we're saying at the point when we appointed people, even we didn't have in print as a county guidance and direction for what they're doing each particular group. And if we did, why didn't we give that to them at the point that we appointed them?
Well, they were all present either virtually or actually at the planning commission when they were appointed. And the planning commission discussed what their role would be.
Yeah, so, and not to go back into the village gardens as an example, when we were going through that rezoning case, and we were explaining to them what was going on with the comprehensive plan, they said, we're not involved. And actually, now that we're getting them involved, we were hoping we can turn the corner in a positive, proactive way. To stop the things that they don't want, because the staff is really gonna tell them Thursday night, we wanna know what you want to do, what you don't want to see, you know.
So if the planning commission could know when they were appointed, why couldn't it have been in print then? If they had to, if they could have heard it then, why didn't we give them clarity in a document that says, thank you, you've been appointed, here's what we expected. And all of our jobs and everything, you know, we have all these manuals and so on that tell us what we're doing, and here's, you know, at the beginning of every one of these board meetings, here's how a meeting is conducted. Why weren't we
So we did,
prepared
we
to give
issued a
something
letter
over
to
to them?
them after they were appointed.
What's that?
After March 8th, we issued a letter to all of them to indicate what was gonna be proposed, what their requirements would be, and when they would be needed. So
Different per group.
per group, it was a summary letter to everyone, so actually everyone in one of the three groups knew where they would be playing in the schedule that is on shown here. So.
But we don't have spelled out per, what is it, 3 groups, right? We don't have spelled out per group what their
Yeah,
particular role is envisioned as we get them started.
yeah, and the second group has already been running, so that's the main one, Zion Crossroads, and they're just being folded into that group.
But
In the process, though, the process is, you're reviewing sections of the comprehensive plan, and you're seeking input from both the planning commission and these advisory groups.
Correct.
And that's essentially the process is,
Yeah.
here's a section, read the section, provide us your input and thoughts on it. There's no, you know, I mean, do your research if you want to, look at these things, but there's no real formal task that anybody is doing as part of the process.
where is that spelled out there?
It's, I mean, that's just been the
That's
process.
just how we work, and then just
That's the
remember,
way
a
it's
lot
been
of the
done, right?
chapters that are currently, not being reviewed, they've already been reviewed by other consultants.
I
So
understand.
Dewberry, Water and Waste, we didn't do utilities.
But
I'm talking about what these volunteers, they've said, I'll step up. And they're sitting here in this, some of them are expressing to me that they're in this kind of float zone. They're not sure yet. I'm just gonna leave it this. We should have given people something that says, until next steps, here's the general sense of what your committee is gonna be about. We should have been able to give that to them in a way that they could read it and go, I see, now let's wait for step number 2. And that they don't, there's no vision statement, there's no, vision
See,
statement's a big
that's-
word, big term. There's no, here's a general sense of what your committee is gonna do, that we hand it over to them to say what's,
That's not consistent with what these entities are. They're not entities, these groups. They are not making decisions.
right.
They are not designing the plan. They are giving their input, however they want to make it. A lot of it, a little of it, the big change, little change, whatever they want to say.
Mhm.
They can say whatever they want to say on these issues. And-
I'll say it this way. For someone like me who's only been here like 3, I mean, not even 3 years, I need their institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what we're striving for. They know that. Other people who have been appointed, like Mrs. DeGuan, she only lived here a year. So she has stuff that she's bringing in from other areas to tell us that this may work or not. So it runs the gamut. There's people that have lived here their entire lives and want to extract everything. And,
I understand.
and, I mean, there's things that even folks in my office, I've asked them, I don't know, why don't you ask Mr. Longstead, because he, you know, or whatever. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower them to utilize their skills and the things to set up that. And we're not creating new vision statements for the rural preservation area. So we're not,
I understand.
everything
I'm-
that's in the comp plan is what's going to be done. And then we're just enhancing some of it. So we're not.
I'm just gonna leave this. There's people on these committees that don't have clarity of what's expected of them.
Okay.
And that's not a good thing in any organization. And that's true of the citizens and our constituents. And when they ask me, I go, gosh, I really don't know either. And that's just not, or whatever the role is, beneficial, whatever. That's not a good organizational structure that creates
Yeah.
confidence
So after
in leadership.
April 14th, if you still hear that, then we have an issue.
I
I don't
hear
think you're gonna hear that after April 14th and going into the March 12th session. I think they'll know they're on track and will know to participate and how they'll participate. So
Thank you.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now go forward with the consent agenda. G, minutes of March 23rd, 2022. H, road name adoption, Hammond House Lane, Mr. O Street. I, FY 22, radiological emergency preparedness program, Rep Grant and Smith. J, memorandum of understanding between the county of Fluvanna and Fluvanna County Radio Control Flying Club LLC. Ms. Harris, is there anything you want to pull? Hearing none, do I have a motion for the?
I have a question. My understanding in our history, I remember, what was her name that was assistant county administrator?
Shelley, right?
Shelley. I remember when we named roads in the county, I remember her standing in front of the board saying that that we had a policy that we would not name roads based upon people's names. Is that? I just wanted to bring, I don't care what we
I
call it,
don't remember that.
but if that's a policy that's out there, then I just thought I should mention it before we go saying, yeah, let's name it after somebody.
Well, you're not naming it, you're talking about this one, you're not naming it after a person, you're naming it after a house.
A house?
Yes, it's Hannum House Lane.
The house was built in the 1700s,
I see.
and I think originally it was called White Cottage, but then a woman lived there for nearly her entire life, well into over hundreds. Her name was Hannah. So when we bought the house in that parcel, we just started calling it Hannah House.
I see.
But it would probably sound better if it was White Cottage.
Okay. I mean, I don't care either way. Okay, thank you.
Any questions? All right, do we have a motion?
So much.
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, second by Mr. Booker. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The chair votes aye, motion passes 5-0. Now we'll move on to unfinished business. And then, is there any unfinished business? I don't believe there is any.
Yeah.
Is that the Zions Crossroad Board line?
Yeah,
I thought that was under you.
No, that's kind of a follow-up.
Okay, Zions Crossroad Board line extension.
Yeah, really quick. So I met with Brad Humphrey, who I think Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Sheridan both kind of forwarded me an email. It's about some infrastructure funding available for bipartisan infrastructure law and then drinking water state revolving fund. So there's a program out there, and this is in reference to the Zions Crossroad West extension. I was going to go ahead and apply for some funding for this. The thing that I want the board to know, though, is it's not 100% just all grant funding. What they have for this is there's either one, a really low cost loan, which you can get. I think they said the rate's around 1.5% right now, but what they do end up doing based upon different criteria for different environmental justice factors, they may forgive a portion of the principal. Now, in addition to that, I'm still going to go back to DEQ and see if they can request some additional funding too. But just wanted to see if the board had any, and again, we're not obligated by anything at this point. If we submit an application and we get something, just because we get it, there's no upfront cost. It's just staff time to do it. I just want to make sure the board didn't have any issues and what with submitting for that, and we can see what they come back with, and they could probably give us a better idea based upon the package of, let's just say we're looking for $1 million in addition to what we've already earmarked and received for funding. Maybe they'll forgive principal of 50% of it or something. And so at that point, we can determine, well, do we want to move forward with it? Or maybe also kind of in conjunction with that, where, we can see what type of DEQ funding comes, is available as well. So does the board have any issues with staff moving forward with that? Okay.
All right, and now L, social services.
So the board, so I received the letter from the Social Services Board. I got the letter, I guess, a day or two ago. And I provided the letter to the board, basically stating that I unilaterally changed their request. And if you look down where they said what items have changed, I can tell you some things were changed, but it was not by myself when I'm sitting. I met with these changes were made back in December when I met with the Director of Social Services and her office manager when we were going through the budget review process. And so I think what the Social Services Board is saying is, if there was a request in there, even though there were lines that were, what was being budgeted in that line was incorrect. Because if you look down at some of the things, there's some lines I decreased in the request, some lines I increased because what was being budgeted was factually incorrect in the line that it was going to. It should have been coming out of this line. So there was some movement in those lines. So, I think from their standpoint, they're contending that because they have some authority that I shouldn't have done that, even though I was meeting with the social services director at the time when we were going through this, and I haven't touched the budget since then, besides what I proposed to the board. So anyway, I just wanted to bring to the board's attention. You can see the letter there, and it was signed by the chair, vice chair, and other social services board members. Throughout the process, what was presented, I didn't hear any, there was nothing brought contending that to the board that what was being presented or what was being proposed by me was not agreeable to them. So I just want to bring that to the board's attention.
So it's all $5,000.
Yeah, well, I guess what the request was.
No.
And again, whatever the request is, I don't necessarily approve the request, because again, there's their full request, and then there's what their baseline request plus their full request. And basically with some changes, I basically funded their full request. So like I said,
That's normal procedure that you would sit down with the director of social services and review where you thought the changes could be made for that discussion. And
which we do.
Services board should come back and provide their input, right?
Which we did. We met, and there was none of this where Eric's off to the side changing the budget document without their input. So just
Seems like during budget discussion, services was made and share her concerns or if that's out.
yeah, and at the time, and in Miss Babe's defense, she shared them far after the fact, after my budget had already been proposed and had already been forward, and everything was advertised and out in the public budget book. So
And we're talking about $1,600.
yes,
Yeah,
Yeah,
money is not the issue, it's just the perception in terms of how it's handled.
right.
Process.
yeah. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
I've got two quick items. One is, I think I would like to see us start having, and I don't know what to call it, but for lack of a better term, a to-do list that when we leave a meeting and we say, Mr. Dahl, would you please add this to that list, and whether it was going to be done by next meeting or 2 months from now. I've noticed that there's times where we leave the meeting and we say something's going to happen, or let's work on this or look into it. And sometimes it goes into, we don't know what the next, we don't know what the next step is.
Rather write, you're saying just to write down stuff, and we come up with ideas we'd like for them to look into.
Well, I mean, usually from the board meeting, if the board has some things, we will put it in directives in the minutes or the action report.
But where does it go after that? So once you read it in the minutes and we're a month later, and yeah, it went in the action report and so on, but where's that list that gets ticked off of that it's still live in action until it gets taken care of.
I guess that's in my internal list of things that we're working on. I mean, for instance, a prime example, at one of the last meetings, the board asked for, they wanted to know, well, wasn't there a memorandum of understanding with the ARC for funding? So you have the ARC memorandum of understanding. I mean, if there's something that we're missing, maybe we're not doing a good enough job of gathering what the board's directives are at the end of the meeting.
So this isn't about individuals at all. It's about process to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're saying. You'd rather have us have the list written down that we can look at.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but there's something called a month and a half ago or something. Again, everybody's human.
Yep.
It's not a comment about staff at all, but there was something that we said to you, we asked you about. And you said, yeah, I think that's been handled. And then ultimately you said, actually, you're right, we didn't. You all remember what it was?
No.
There was something that you said, yeah, you're right, I did not bring it back.
There was something, I think I recall vaguely.
And I don't even know what it was.
What's that? The water report? Oh, about the whole
that's right.
Aqua Virginia thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that didn't come back in front of the board. And again, no problem with, I'm not saying,
It did come back. It just didn't.
not until we said we had not seen.
Yeah, I
that
brought it
report.
back up. and said-
Yes.
Right.
And
Exactly what I'm saying. You brought it back up.
Right, but in a sense, that's the, if you're making, and I'm not disagreeing with it, a passive, but you also want to break the redundant processes, but I mean, I think to a degree there is a responsibility of the supervisor who is asking for something, and where there's then sort of tacit approval from the rest of the supervisors saying, yes, please devote staff time to pursue this.
Mhm.
It is somewhat, on the responsibility of the person who brought that forward to champion and say, yeah, I'm looking for that follow-up on that.
And
So when leadership says the staff, please give that to us.
And
It's
like I said,
it's not up to staff, it's not up to leadership. No, that's what I'm saying. They eliminate the human factor. It's not up to leadership to go, hey, I haven't heard back from you yet. When you say that to staff, we'd like to have that, and you didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's not up to me to remember and go, hey, remember that we said we were gonna.
well,
It should go on that. I'm just imagining a list, a task list.
well, and I guess maybe sometimes we have a list of things to do that we know need to be done, but I guess if we don't get a date that we need them by, because it's asked by a certain date, doesn't mean we've forgotten about it. It just a lot of things came up and there's more higher pressing priorities.
And that's why I said, whether it's the next meeting or 2 months from now,
Yeah,
because I thought ahead about that. I don't care if it's 6 months.
sure.
But I feel like we should have a list that we don't forget things because we're anxious to move on to the next thing.
You're trying to say that we're all getting old,
No,
and
you are.
I am.
I've had this problem since I was younger.
Well, and remember I said I was gonna bring some up? I'm gonna talk about something like this, another.
So does the board agree or disagree that we need something like this, or what's your thoughts?
I never sense the problem, so.
Okay.
Once in a while, it's not to a point that I think we need to jump on the list. I mean, just have it a lot of times. I have been, I think, it's been pretty much on.
Okay.
They've been on that.
Yeah.
Again, it's not it could be the best people in the world. I'm not talking about.
No, I mean,
I'm talking about process.
yeah, I mean, I guess just from a staff standpoint, if there's directives that come out, it would be helpful for the board to then give guidance of if they want it within some certain period of time. Because again, we are human and things could drop. I'm not saying that we're perfect, but sometimes, again, as I said before, it doesn't mean that we forgot about it. They're just other things that are, if we don't know that there's a date that it's done by, it doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means that there's other things that are taking priority.
The hesitancy might be, in my opinion, is that Mr. Dahl is tasked to be the county administrator to direct. We're tasked to give general guidance and to pass and our ordinances and those things.
Yeah.
But we're not here to oversee his day in, day out task per se. That's his responsibility. To the degree that he fails to do that, is to the degree that we continue to employ. Right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the process.
All right, well, Our thing's supposed to start in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And we still gotta go to into
Yeah.
closed session.
Yep.
Ms. Booker,
You want to wait, I can wait.
let's wait. Do you mind waiting on that?
Mhm.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. But I think you bring up a good point. Like you just said, where I forget stuff. I call him up sometime at the oddest hours of the night and say, hey,
Yeah.
before I forget, let me tell you this.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I forgot.
I don't mind a simple list, and I just don't want to be in a position where we're micromanaging.
All I'm saying is if we said as a board, we'd like to see something, I don't care, I'd just like it to be on the list so we don't forget that we want to see it. If it's 6 months out. it's not
Whether
like
it's to
we're-
remind us or to remind them.
Right.
Yeah,
We
we'll
can leave it.
we'll talk, we'll talk internally.
Hey, we'll come back to it and revisit it, but that's just something. Anyway.
Yep.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chair, I move the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors enter into closing. Discussing litigation, actual litigation, connection with design structures, water and sewer project, and legal matters. County-owned property.
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Booker, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes 5-0. We are now in closed session. I apologize, we're not going to get started with that.
Yeah. Mute here, I guess.
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, second by Mrs. Booker. Ms. Eager.
Aye.
Ms. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Fairchild. Chair votes aye. We're now out of closed session. Mr. O'Brien, do you have a motion for us?
I move the Board of Supervisors approve and ratify, one, the engagement of Hoover Penrod PLC as attorneys in the representation of the county and the Fluvanna County Treasurer with respect to the county's claim as creditors in the bankruptcy case 22-6011-5-RBC in regards to A.G. Dillard Inc. debtor pending the United States Bankruptcy Court, Western District of Virginia, Lynchburg Division. And two, the filing on behalf of the county of any responses, motions, answers, or other filings in such cases being reasonable and appropriate by counsel from Hoover Penrod PLC, the county attorney, and the county administrator, and the execution or signature by the county administrator or counsel for the county to such filing on the county's behalf as appropriate.
Second. Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, second by Mr. Booker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We didn't hear a recorded vote. did
No, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
we? We did.
Yeah. Well, did you vote? Okay. All yes. Chair votes aye, motion passes 5-0. All righty, folks, we will now.
I'm not close then.
Yeah, we did.
Roll call.
Yes. Well, did you call Mr. Fairchild, Mr. Weaver?
I noticed that.
Hey, I was thinking about that the whole time. All right, the budget, discussion, Mr. Dawson.
Yeah, so Mr. Sheridan, members of the board, let's see here. Let me hide this. All right, so if the board remembers last time, we advertised a real estate tax rate of 87 cents and a personal property residential tax rate of 375. Personal property business and public utilities stayed the same at 190, and machinery and tools stayed the same at $1.90. So since the budget last time, I've only had one change that's come up. And if you remember, we talked about fire and rescue workers comp went up. We also got notice that the county's workers comp is going to be going up a little bit too, which amounts to $12,000. Now that means we're short $12,000, but there's an easy fix for that. As we were balancing the budget last time, as we were kind of going into an advertised budget, the board originally put $50,000 in the BOS contingency just as kind of a placeholder for things they may want to consider. And then we put another $120,000 in BOS contingency as we were trying to come up to just an advertised balanced tax rate. So to level that 12 grand out, we can easily just go ahead and hit minus right here for the 12,000. And we're all balanced if that's what the board wants to do. I mean, again, that additional 170,000 BOS contingency is a pretty hefty amount. I mean, that would be my recommendation from the board to get us at a level balanced budget at this point as it stands.
Is there another option?
You would either we would have to decrease expenses elsewhere, or you're going to have to increase revenues, or you're going to have to increase the tax rate, which we actually can't do. So that's, to me, that's probably the best. That's probably the most. So at this point, as far as determining, so next week we're gonna have a public hearing based upon what the board advertised, and so there's really no big discussion. I mean, the board could always have some work session afterwards if they want, but I mean, unless the board has any big changes, I think some of the only things that we haven't addressed at this point, I know there was some discussion from the board for CIP.
Numbers at the end.
Yeah, the fire rescue brought up something, I think it was about $50,000 request.
They did.
And then there's $1,000 from social services. Seems pretty, $1,600. Seems like it's pretty.
Well, we threw in a bunch of numbers at the end. We put 400,000 blocks in there for the entire, and we don't even know what those numbers are now. Do we? We haven't seen anything.
We don't. We had it's still being finalized. So I mean, for that, what I would say with the 400,000, I mean, when it's all said and done, unless we get a final report prior to budget adoption, I would just put that into the BOS contingency, because we know it's going to be some amount, but it may be it could be less, it could be more. And so if it's in BOS contingency, once that comes about, we'll bring it to the board for their final approval then.
Well, I had mentioned about doing 200,000 for the heck.
Okay.
Do it, start January 1. And do 200,000, and then if there's an increase or decrease, we know we're gonna see an influx in January 1. Or we should, because I think the assessments are going up. I don't want to assume anything, but since our neighbors went up 12%, I think it's a pretty good bet average for us.
Yeah,
And
like I said, that's entirely up to the board. I can say for certain there are, at some point, I'm going to need to address with the board that there's positions that are under where they need to be.
well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm just, one of the things we've done in the past, put it and pick it up in January 1. And we can do it July 1. And we had another number we added. 50,000 somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's again, going back here, this number right here, if you look up here, we put 50,000 as just kind of I think Mr. O'Brien made the suggestion, let's just put 50,000 in there because there's some things that we may want to cover. And then when we came back to the last meeting where we got the big surplus of personal property, when we were trying to balance it, we were unbalanced by 120,000. And so we just put the 120,000 in BOS contingency. So, oops.
How much is normal?
Oh, yeah.
100,000, right?
Yeah. I mean, in your BOS contingency right now, you already have board contingency. You have 150,000 in your contingency every year. And you put those amounts in there just as kind of a placeholder for right now.
So that's on top of that.
Yeah, you got the 1.7, well, minus the 12, around 158 plus the 150. So that's,
Oh, so, I mean,
you got a substantial amount. In,
there's almost 10 cents that we can take off personal property. If I remember correctly, it was 189.
Well,
For a nickel. Oh, that's right. a
Yeah,
nickel's
yeah,
189.
yes.
A nickel is-
Yeah.
If you wiped out the entire board contingency, right?
No.
yeah,
It's not like enough for it.
We're at 800,000.
you would want to keep 150 in board. That's the same.
Keeping 150,
If you wipe that 10 cents or no?
a nickel. I said 10 cents.
Yeah.
It's 189 a nickel.
Okay. And
Close.
And so a couple of things, just a few things that came up. One, the UTV that came up, that was 20,000, that the board didn't do anything with that. And again, if the board was going to do something with that, I would add that into the CIP. And then maybe you could take it out of the 170, or you just fund it out of fund balance and it doesn't affect the tax rate. You could do that. It's a one-time cost. So that's certainly one.
Below CIP level. And
It is in the grand scheme of things, but I would just,
bad precedent to take it out of fund balance. When we put in a contingency in order to have that in place, right? I think you can still reduce the personal property rate. But I'm just saying, in terms of precedents, these are the kinds of things, especially for $20,000, that should just flat out come out of the contingency you put in specifically.
Yeah, we talked about taking out BOS contingency.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It should come out of that, not out of fund balance or not.
so does the board agree to add the UTV in there?
I think that's what they were, I think we all talked about that. As necessary.
Okay, so I'm just gonna add 20 right there. So now we're 20 short, so let's go minus 32. Okay, so now we're even. What's that?
For the 170.
170 hasn't changed.
Remember, we're taking away, this column right now reflects only changes from the last budget.
132.
Yeah.
That was the request that you brought up.
Correct.
Yeah.
20K.
And then there's a $1,600 for social services.
Yeah, she's there. She's in the back.
You want to address that $1,600 differential or?
So the $1,600, when I met with Mr. Dahl and Ms. Melton in December, Mr. Dahl recommended a couple of changes to our budget request. And we were okay with that. We didn't contest it. What happened was when we received our actual budget from the county, we received it on February the 2nd. And so we noticed that the column with our request was changed to match the county administrator's recommendation. And I was under the impression that what Mr. Dahl was recommending would go under the column, the county administrator column, and then our actual request still remains a request. So, and I think the letter from the board was just the board just wants the board of supervisors to know what we actually requested. That was the only issue. And this year it's only $1,600, but next year it could be $10,000 or, $20,000. And I think the issue was that the request was changed, not that they're really wanting that $1,600 back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think they're asking for the 1,600. I think what they're saying is, and when I go back to, we made a request, the request shouldn't have changed, although what was being requested was in the wrong line and the amounts were incorrect. And so you can look at it one of two ways. I mean, we pay the electrical cost. And so if you're budgeting above what the electrical costs are that we're doing, well, that seems, I mean, I guess from the social services board, they can ask for more for electrical costs than what we actually pay for, but that seems not to be, it wouldn't seem reasonable in my opinion, but they can certainly do that then. I mean, so from my standpoint, it's trying to be fiscally responsible and looking at where things should be coming out of the correct line. But if they think I can't do that, well, then whatever.
And I don't think that's the issue. I think, so when we met with Mr. Dahl in December, he was able to pull up and show us what our actual expenditures were over the last few years and made a recommendation as to how much we should put in our budget line for electricity. I understood that. That was fine. I told our board, but again, the issue is, where does that amount go? Does it go in the county administrator's recommended budget line, or does it change our request? And I don't have the authority to change our request. That comes from the board. That's all.
Gotcha. So it's a matter.
So
It's the
They
procedure.
just wanted to make
So-
sure that they were heard about the procedure.
Yep.
I agree.
And the board just wants to make sure that you know what the actual request was.
All right, thank you very much. All right, is there anything else you want to look at
Or it's regular budget.
as far as regular budget goes?
So right now, we essentially have theoretically somewhere between $370,000. I'm sorry, $570,000, but if you were to allocate a half year, you could make it $370,000 in terms of whether or not we were funding the rates increases.
well, the comp study.
$138,000 right there. On On the contingency.
I read it as 170, but you're right, it's 158.
138. So 538.
It's actually last year, you got 20,000.
But
Yeah, we basically take the 32 away from the 170. That's the difference. And I don't know what that is.
the only thing I was saying is we could look at, that would be, if we did half a year, 338,000,
Is that what it is? I don't know.
which would be
But then you don't have.
almost 2 million.
Right. You don't have the- Yeah, you have $150,000, but you don't have, we would have. We would, we wouldn't have the flexibility with regard to the, what the compensation study comes back to implement beforehand or after January 1st, right?
Correct.
So we wouldn't have that flexibility.
Well, yeah, we would, we just might have to take it from a different place.
Well,
I mean, we got, I don't know how many million sitting in the general fund. I mean, obviously, to tell you not to do that, but every once in a while, if we'd have to take 100,000 or something to balance the level things out. If it comes back, we started January 1, it comes back and says, okay, we need $75,000 more. Then we could just pull $75,000 out of the general fund and survive until the next budget season.
Let me ask you,
Yes, ma'am.
where is the, salary study? It's not here yet,
it's
but you all are saying it's 400,000.
In the
But
vicinity.
we, in a percentage, but we haven't seen it, and if we wait, like you were saying, I mean, we're gonna be hiring,
You're right, we
but
have,
we wanna have.
yeah, we have 9 open positions, and one of those positions have been open for
Yeah.
13 months.
Right,
Actually, we have 10, because someone that retired, we haven't even posted it yet. The compensation study, to tell you where we're at with that, they have all of the job descriptions, they have done everything, compared it with several of the localities, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, et cetera. We are at the point now where she's actually making our pay structure. From there, we have to meet with the board to decide where you guys want to base the new pay structure off of, whether it's the midpoint or the 95th percentile, et cetera. But we're almost there and hopefully within, at the max, maybe 2 weeks, she'll have that completely done. She's had that for about a week now.
right.
yeah. I don't think we're gonna have the full completed one. Unfortunately, it's just taking a little longer. By the time we approve the budget,
Just say COVID.
Thank you, yeah, well, they were off, it was about 3 weeks of loss, so.
And then we had the dam breaking.
There you go.
Right.
and like I said, the board, like I said, whatever the board does, I just know there are positions that we're having trouble getting, and I can tell you one of them specifically because I've been doing it. So, and some of our pay is just it's not competitive.
And I honestly, I was at another HR convention with IPMA. We need to really move forward with this, or I'm afraid we're gonna lose more.
Yes.
So I guess, what Mr. Sheridan is sort of advocating for is trying to reduce the personal property tax by maybe a nickel, 10 cents in his mind, but maybe a nickel to support that. So the appetite for that.
I mean, just y'all,
That's fine.
to reduce it by 10 cents.
Between the 170 and the
If we can-
32.
The only way we can do that is we have to find $396,000.
Yeah. If you did that, then you are for sure potentially, I don't want to say, potentially, but you have limited the proposed amount of money for the compensation study to $200,000. Actually, $150,000 to be honest. And so therefore, you're either gonna pull that out of general fund balance, you just, pull out of that pocket. If you went for 10 cents, if you went for a nickel, then you could take the remaining $132,000 and take $50,000 out of that $400,000. And then if it came back, then we had to put in another $50,000.
We have to put in 50,000, just put up 50.
I mean, if you,
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts, Ms. Higgins?
Does let me just ask one thing. Does the board want to just start off with, okay, we've got this 170 here that was just kind of there for a placeholder. Do you just want to say minus the 170 so you can kind of see what that starting point is? I mean, because that was kind of above.
Just say 138. Just say 138, 220, 270.
No, he's just saying if he moves it all over, then you know what.
Yeah, because we already decreased 32. So if we just say we're decreasing the whole amount, because we've already offset that 32.
Well, okay.
So if
I
you
was just going to offset it from that number, 138, 275.
So now I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
So that's kind of your adjustment, the 138 right now. So, I mean, you could say we want to move what are you saying? You want to move personal property?
Yeah, if you moved it to 370, well, now 370 would be the, well, you're gonna still be short.
Yep.
34,000.
Yeah, you're short 34,000.
Right.
That's, you know, that's easy.
Was there anywhere else? That's why I said,
No.
hindsight's 2020. We were all so excited to be able to say 87. We probably should have said 88. Just to balance it out, take apart from one, apart from the other, instead of one whole section absorbing the whole hit.
Well, we could also play, or not play, but we could also say, let's do 86.9 cents for the budget for the real estate, right, instead of 87. So now we're at the 6 cent range. You know, like that.
No, what I'm saying is, we put all the increases in personal property, except for 1/10%. I think it was 86.9 was the equalized rate. If I
Mhm.
remember correctly. And that's why I said, hindsight's 2020, we probably should have said 88 as an advertised rate, so we put part of the increase there and part of the increase in personal property.
You have an equalized rate?
No, he was just,
Oh, equalized in terms of.
In real estate.
Yeah.
The real estate, equalized in real estate.
Personal
Yeah,
property.
no, not personal. Real estate equalized rate was 86.9,
Yeah.
we're at 87.
it's not an official reassessment year, so we don't advertise what the equalized rate is. Mr. Sheridan was just comparing. Yes.
The other Mr. Sherman.
Yes, Commissioner Mel Sheridan, yeah.
Right, so, I mean, I've never been one to think that 86.9 versus 87 is something that you can brag about. I mean, you know.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if we'd have left a little wiggle room on the other side, then if we have an increase, we could have spread it out both ways.
So we're trying to find 34,500.
No, we got 34,000.
I mean, if the board,
Yeah,
No, just take it out of 400,000.
yeah.
Then if we have to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about, the general fund if we have to. Chris, Mr. Fairchild?
I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
so you want me
I
to,
mean, that's,
So knock it to 350. Just knock it to 350
let's
to
hear.
keep it a round number. Knock the salary thing to
You
350.
said put it to 350?
And then we're
Okay, so that's minus 50.
15,489 above.
Okay,
So just leave it.
So-
We go
so-
into the general fund to pay the part of the, if we have to go up with the salary study, then that's 15,000.
So where did you do the 350?
so right,
Salary.
so we put 400, so we reduced it by 50
Okay.
for a July 1 start. I mean, so now we've got excess of 15,489.
By 40, you got, you know,
I
$4,000.
mean, 15 is not an issue, and we probably are gonna have to go up because the study will need more.
I mean, we can put the exact number in if you want. I mean, because it's up to the board.
15,000 or 10,000 to drop in the well. 50 cents.
I mean, we're gonna use that $50,000 somewhere else or not?
No, I wouldn't. I'm just.
Because what's the difference?
And do we know the insurance increase is gonna be 95,000 or?
It's gonna be a ballpark.
Yeah, that's, I mean, again, you don't 100% know that until that's the ballpark projected on what everyone is kind of at now and making some assumptions. But, you know, some people could,
Can
I
we
mean,
leave it just like this and being 15,000 over,
No, we have to put that 15,000 somewhere.
What happens if we go to 86.99? Come on, let's do it. Come on,
I think,
86 cents. We haven't seen 86 cents in a long
I
time.
think that Mr. Sheridan that's not here would not be happy if you went 4 digits.
No, I'm saying for that $15,000.
Hey, hold on, put it, just to play with his.
Yeah, 86.99.
86.95. 86.
I never
No,
said
86.96, 86.96 will be close.
Okay.
Oh,
Hold on. Let's see here. We got,
Hey, what? Oh, you gotta do it to all of them, man.
Yep.
It's gonna get closer each time you go.
Okay, we're not-
I think we're okay.
we're not there. No,
Yeah. Heck, you could have made it 86.95.
Yeah, you can go to 86.95.
now, see, we're over now.
Yeah, and never mind, go back to 87.
Okay.
No, do 86.96.
No,
Use it up, use it up.
No, no.
Absolutely.
no.
Absolutely.
I need consensus.
I want to see 86 cents.
87 is a lot easier to deal with than 86.96 or 86.9, yeah, 86.
I'm just going back.
I tried, I just want to say, I tried to lower it. All right, I did try. I did. lower it.
Oh, my
That's the
God.
difference
I'm gonna leave
between.
that.
I
for
try to
later.
remember that and put my fellow board members
Yep,
first
just-
against it.
Want to say, that's,
All right, is there anything else we need to look at, or are we
Well, it just
just,
needs to even that.
Yeah,
number,
let's
just
hold on.
zero, so.
I'll just put that in the contingency fund.
Yeah.
I'm
Whatever
just
that
gonna-
is.
just gonna just correct it then.
That's I mean, that's,
That's easy.
so this 400 is 365 and so,
We'll have- I mean, what we have, how much have we spent out of our board contingency this year?
well, here, I can tell you, it's in the board package here. Let me see here.
We still have. enough
View
left
as
to
contingency,
cover.
contingency.
But that would be our.
You've got 99,000 left still in this fiscal year.
I mean, we talked about salaries and stuff, but we just talked about our inability to. We've saved enough in salaries that will go back into the city to cover the entire 400,000. Probably.
You know,
Mr. Dahl, would that be close?
Yeah, I
Probably
mean,
less.
yeah, I mean, I think one salary alone for one whole year, I mean, is,
That's what I'm talking about. It's probably
yeah,
that.
know that Louisa sent in a bill that Pete, anyway, that the board can raise that salary every year. I don't know if that's
can raise whose salary?
outside. And we don't have.
Oh, the board supervisors, oh.
We don't even give
Okay.
bonuses. I mean, we give out a bonus to every employee in the county, and 5 employees don't get bonus.
But they put that to the general assembly, I don't know if that's.
So Louisa did?
Louisa did. That's what I started one of the supervisors.
Yeah, I just
As soon
got
as
one.
that passes, they're gonna raise their tax rate.
Guys, I mean, the fact that we were able to do what we've done, and I know personal property is not where we want to be, but
So our budget's balanced right now. Now, going back to is there anything else the board wants to look at in the budget? Because again, there was some discussion on CIP items too, and so,
Yeah, you know, at the last minute, I was thinking about women, joint, lowered their request by 12,500, and when we were doing the budget, this is what age you do to you, and I did write it down. I was wanting to come back because you had a concern about elderly people can't get a ride.
Oh,
And
that's what
I'm
you're talking
saying,
about.
why can't we make a deal with joint and use that and make 12,000 would do it? But that they would have a midday run where people could go to the doctor's appointment and they could pick up right home for 3 or 4 o'clock. But I slept on that one, we really do.
I don't know enough about
Something.
the way they do it, except for the fact that they pick up at certain points.
Right.
But
But
if
they
you do
put-
the door to door, would require so much manpower.
But yeah, but there's sometimes. It would depend on how many patients you have. You don't want a bus like if you would, everybody know 5 or 6 people may not go to the doctor. Same thing.
That's what I'm saying, this would be more of an individual.
Yeah.
thing.
Right, but it's needed. I spent 4 hours a day taking the elderly to the doctor, 4 hours. And I don't mind, I'm not complaining.
Can I double dip and have the kids drive by and pick them up, take them to the doctor?
That's a good idea.
That might be good for their blood pressure. Right around those children.
Yeah, yeah.
Right up there proposed. Yeah, but we got to do something.
I don't know of anything else that,
Well, the CIP.
I don't know, I mean,
I mean,
except the CIP, but we're only talking about a small amount for CIP.
Yeah, again, I mean, again, just if the board's gonna approve a budget, you know,
Did we reduce the school buses?
you did not, the board talked about it.
Oh, yeah. we can reduce school bus.
Yeah, but we were gonna give that money for.
Oh, what was
It was,
wireless.
it was the wireless,
So it was a switch between the wireless and the school buses.
yes.
Correct.
Right, and the 3
Yeah,
buses.
'cause
I
I
think we
mean,
should do
we
that.
don't need to buy 16 buses in 1 year, or 13 buses in 1 year, when we can buy 5 a year and cover everything.
And they definitely need the wireless system.
So,
I mean, that's what Dr. Brett said.
Well, I mean, and that's the one at the high school that needs to be upgraded, and we want to keep that, we want to keep their accomplishments where they are. And having said that, sure, we need to recognize, don't ask me which, one of our teams just won their 4th consecutive state championship.
yeah, it was the,
Academics, I think, or debate. Forensics.
yeah,
I knew I was gonna screw it up.
Williamsburg High School has won that forensic every year, and Jim called me, because she's in Williamsburg. She said, Mama, Fluvanna beat us. We won.
We won that for the last 4 years, I think.
I think Williamsburg, I think. this
We've
is-
had an exceptional run.
Yeah.
And people sit there and want to say things about how we're not getting stuff accomplished. Just look at what our academic teams are accomplishing.
So.
do we want to swap out the buses for the technology?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Well, we're swapping out 150,000 or whatever it was for the, what was it, technology?
Well, yeah, they
Wireless
were,
wasn't 300,000.
that's what they requested. That was their original request, was 300,000.
Get us up 30,000.
Well, yeah, you can pretty much wire.
Ah.
That's a lot.
And you remember the last time when you talked about Chromebooks and you said that's a lot for a Chromebook.
No, that was about whether it was one of the regular budget.
3 or 4
understanding
days.
about it.
Okay.
No, but, that was that discussion, but, no, I mean, a wireless access point is in the $100 range for a good one. You know, 330,000 divided by 100, if you do $100 per installation, $200, you're talking about, what, 6,000 access points in the high school? I mean, I do this for a living, so I know.
No,
Ah.
I stay as far away from a computer as I can stay.
6,000 access points would be,
It's not realistic.
yeah, it's not realistic from that standpoint, but maybe 150,000 or something.
Can we use some of the ARPA money for technology?
They would have to do that.
Yeah,
They have their own department,
yeah,
Okay.
I believe.
they do have their own federal
Oh,
ARPA type money. Yeah, I mean, that's what they requested, and
do you see a number?
well, sorry, hold on. I mean, that's what the 300,000 was in there as the original amount. Yep.
Is there anybody from the schools that wants to talk about that? Because
Anybody on from the schools?
Nope.
that is a really big number for what they're talking about doing.
I think. it's-
Well, I mean, we can always give them 150,000.
Right.
No, I think we ought to go back and talk to the school and let the school educate Mr. Tony, right? Because
Well, I'll tell you what,
coming from
I'll tell you what,
someone
if they want to put it
that-
in for $300,000, you have to do it.
I want to see that conversation between you and what's
Josh.
Yeah, I'll be.
And you
happy-
may
happy
learn
to-
tell you what.
something, or he may learn something. you
We
both
can
may
put
learn.
300,000 there, but that's when we can still adjust.
Well, again, I mean, I'm still a big fan of doing the spray park. I think that's something that we should really bring in.
I thought we-
Yeah, we did put it in.
We don't have water.
No, the spray ground park's not in.
No, we don't, I don't think we can do it anyway, we don't
Well, we
have.
could, if we do $150,000 and minus one bus, minus two buses, then we can do the spray ground.
Well, no, I think what Mrs. Booker's talking about is having the necessary water availability and
Correct.
So how do
Mr.
we get the
Spitzer,
water then?
We got to get.
So maybe we put in the money to get the water, then next time we put the spray part in.
We do need water.
Okay, so.
No, wait, just come up here and do it to the microphone, Mr. Spencer.
All right.
No, I'm not. putting that.
and Mr. Hickman may want to come down this way too.
Yeah, so the park has no potable water or any water source other than the well that runs to the schools right now. We have a couple wells that does the butterfly and the community garden, but they are not able to be used for potable water use. They're not safe enough. And the only one that's safe enough right now is the one that feeds the school. There was research done for a new possible well, like behind the pole barn area. I know at one time, I believe, but that would take some money to pump it up the hill because it'd be down the hill. So that was, and then we have the well that I found behind the school. But
Is that on
that
school property?
is close to school property because it's right behind the retaining wall. You know how they have the retaining wall at the parking lot?
Teacher's parking.
Yep, it's right behind there and it does drip water, but I don't see why the county would want to take that water and run it all the way back across to where I need it at the soccer fields when they have the well right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
But
one day,
there are water issues, like, I have citizens ask me that, why don't you have potable water that we could come and stop on a bike ride and get a drink of water? We don't have that. Like, you know, what is it, the bike route 76 or whatever it is?
Yeah.
A lot of-
Like, right.
A lot of them ask, they come and stop at the park, and what I have to do, I have bottled water in my refrigerator that I give them.
So we have no potable water.
The only
Nope.
system, potable water runs to the schools. I have one tank, one hydrant that I can use for potable water. And that's right at the top, almost in my Carmen field, because that runs to the hospital. So that's the only one that's legally.
you know, the interesting thing is we're just doing this and Miss Harris and Mr. Hickman was looking into this because we've got an MOU with the schools. And if I remember correctly, there's some language in there. It was not meant for the county's well to be a permanent use for the school. Now, I mean, let me take that back and say, well, we're not going to go ahead and cut off the water and sorry, school, you don't have water. I mean, that would. Yeah. I mean, and so we're having to look at our kind of shared arrangement with the schools and for kind of what that whole water system looks like and who's responsible for what. And from a long-term standpoint too, you know, that's a well that
Sounds like to me, this is a conversation for another day.
Yeah,
well, I mean, it definitely
We
is.
have issues with our irrigation system when their schools are pulling from the well, because that feeds our irrigation system for soccer fields and everything.
Right, but here's the thing, okay, if we don't address water this year,
It's gotta be addressed a lot.
then.
And it's getting worse, it's gonna get worse.
We're gonna push that out, right?
It doesn't affect the irrigation system for baseball.
Yeah. But they-
What water do you use for the house?
It is off of a well next to the house that could contain E. coli, and we have signs that say it's not potable for drinking or for cooking use. You can only wash your hands with it.
Okay.
But what happened, and then the bathrooms outside, we have a holding tank. We actually, if the well fills into the holding tank for the bathroom, and that's how we run our bathroom.
Mhm.
We tried to pull off of the school well, the line that runs to the school one time. And when their chiller comes on in summer, it sucks all of our water out of our pipe.
So-
That well located.
It's over by
It's
Frisbee,
golf course.
yeah, by the disc golf
Where my
course.
disc golf course is, by the ball fields.
Yeah,
Right
in
down
between
the bottom.
baseball, outfield.
Yeah, at the bottom
Yep.
of it, right
At
in
the
the
bottom of the hill.
trail.
Oh,
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the hill. If you look at the picture with the parking lot, you can almost see it.
so
It is golf
I
course.
would love for us to figure out a way to use that well that has that, if it's bubbling out of the top.
Well,
It's a tremendous water source, and eventually, if it's that close to that retention wall, it's gonna cause issues with that retention wall.
There's one other thing too. I mean, so technically, if I remember correctly, the sheriff's office is not potable water either, or the library. And so there was some money put in the CIP many years ago to try and I think Mr. Hickman's, Calvin, can you come up? There was money put in the CIP back when I think different public works director.
Before us,
And I think it was Mr. Stevens, yeah. There's money in there for making the water system at the sheriff's office and library potable water, isn't there?
The water at the library is possible.
The library, the sheriff's office.
Sheriff's is not, we are meeting with VDH tomorrow. In fact, they have said they will allow that water to be potable. What happens is when the well's drilled, VDH has to be involved, it has to be permitted correctly. That well was not when it came into place, when that well was drilled. And so VDH wasn't involved enough to see how it was grouted and cased over. It took a lot for us to find a lot of documentation. It's taken me a year to find the correct documentation. To get the VDH, they just now said they will make it potable. We have a meeting tomorrow with Valencia Taylor, the engineer in the Lexington office, and she said she's going to give it over to us. So that water at the sheriff's office will be potable.
So we had 50,000 in there to I remember there's a CIP in there for 50,000 to make that system potable, and I think connected to either the library or whatever needs to be done. So are you saying that 50 we are not going to need for that project necessarily, or maybe to a lesser degree?
To a very small degree, very small.
So next question is, do we have enough water with those two wells, since I'm guessing they're two separate wells, that when we do our project right across the circle, will they be able to feed that, or do we need to go ahead and try to do a study now to find water for the new building?
I would say a new well.
That was my question. So that money right there we could use to pay for some type of study.
Well, and the other thing the reason I was asking is there a way to convert those funds to, I don't know if, I know they tried to drill a well back behind at Pleasant Grove at one time, and it was not successful back.
They cleared out some area, but they never drilled. They
Okay,
went out to survey it, to drill it and find the locations, they never drilled.
okay.
So I can show you that area.
Where is that area?
Behind the pole barn,
If you go down
the trail behind the pole barn.
Yeah,
You
to the
keep
right.
going down to the Ridge Trail, a little bit about halfway down the hill before you get to the bottom, you get right on the trail and it's right off of there.
Well, what I'm getting at is maybe there's an opportunity to use that 50,000 to do something with the water at Pleasant Grove instead.
That's what we're getting.
Yeah.
I would look,
Next year.
I would look and see which one's closer. That well that's already dug, or the well
That's bubbling.
the well that's bubbling, or the one we would be digging down there on that trail.
Oh, it's not even close to the ball fields.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
we're-
not talking about the ball field, I'm talking about the house.
Yeah, for the house,
It's gonna be pretty close.
it'd be close, because it's the way, it just depends on which way you come, yeah.
And
And if you take the one from behind the school, you could probably come up and tap into like the gardens and stuff, and everything would be potable. Because they have issues with the community garden where they can't eat stuff right out of the garden, they have to take it home, clean it. It's not sanitary for them to eat. It's just, it's just what it is, it's just the water we have.
That's what I'm saying, is if we can use that well somewhere, and then possibly use the other one.
But that would,
something else.
that will maybe take care of the house, but I don't see that going all the way down to the soccer field.
Whereas the other one you're talking about, come on.
It's right at the soccer field, yeah. Well, the other one behind the pole barn, it would just come up behind, like down the road by the house. So you still need to feed it down to the soccer field area.
It sounds like we need some money
We need
for
a
a consultant to
water
come in and sort of say, here's what you could or couldn't do as far as water goes to meet those needs.
We don't-
Unless you guys, I mean, if Public Works thinks that they can do that, then it's great. I mean,
Most of your existing wells that are drilled are not, they haven't been permitted correctly. Like the one you're talking about, it didn't start off with.
Just like the sheriff's department.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna run into the same
And it's
issues.
gonna take you a year to get that
Yes.
straight.
So you better off starting from scratch.
So we need a plan. But I put that on the list.
But I do get complaints a lot from bikers that they can't get potable water in the park if we're not open during the day. Because come in the evening, you know, if you're biking down the road, you
Can we
can't.
make phase one of the spray ground basically a water study and put it into this year? You know, is that allowable?
Yeah, I mean, from a CIP, I mean, the
I
board,
wouldn't even call it phase one for Wolford. I'd just say,
Well, I'm just saying.
we're doing a water study at Pleasant Grove so that we can eventually find water sources for the house and for the field.
yeah, I mean, what we could do, I mean, if the board wants to add, I'm not sure do you want to take it from a CIP standpoint, from a,
Like 50 grand is in there, right? I don't know. That seems like
Well, we
that.
got
Yeah.
50 grand sitting.
Yeah, I mean, with between the buses and the other stuff we got.
No, I'm talking about the old 50 grand.
But I think they're gonna use,
Oh, well, you're gonna
he's saying he's gonna use that for the new.
no, I think what we're saying is the 50 grand that's there for the sheriff's office project maybe is not needed. So maybe we can convert that money
That's
into
what I'm saying, yeah.
a different water study.
But that does not sound great shape or form. But even if we said, let's do a spray ground.
I can't do it until I get water.
So you're not gonna get that tonight.
Water has to come.
That'll be a 2-year project.
That's part
Would be my
Yeah.
goal.
I was just thinking with the kids getting out of
I
school.
would really, yeah, it'd be great, a great addition to the park. Like it would bring people from outside the county to our park. It'd be great.
So maybe why don't we do this if within the next couple meetings, if we have a better idea what the sheriff's office project is going to look like, and you know, if it doesn't cost much money, then we can come back to the board for a proposal for a kind of a master water study for Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
And then this way we can get the answers.
To me, that sounds like a more intelligent approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, get the horse first.
I mean, if you look at it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Get
yeah,
the water force,
the difference.
then get the horse to the water.
Exactly.
But like for when we have county fair and events like that, I have vendors that have to bring in their own water. Because I can't supply them water.
And that's.
So you just look at some of the stuff that we have to do to get around and we don't have water.
Horses riding back there, you got mountain bike riders, you got all kinds of people, you got golfers, you know, kids. and
Like you
all
said, you can bring it up by the pole barn and bring it up by where all your vendors are, then.
Because, I mean, we have spigots back there too, we have them everywhere, and they all have a sign that says no potable water, I think.
Oh, hang on, man.
There's 18 of those in the garden alone.
I know what's wrong with me. So you tell me the little thing back there in the bag is non-potable?
And you've been
And,
drinking.
no, well,
People have drank them all
hold
their
on,
life.
hold on.
They
I
said
haven't been
people was out
drinking
there.
and drinking it, but I spent a lot of quality time back there in the dumping booth. Multiple times.
That's
And
why you want it.
I get fairly wet when I'm doing that.
And that's what they filled the water, that's what they.
Oh, yeah, I remember, they like cutting the hose on me, that's stuff cold when it comes in there.
So it sounds like we probably need to hold on the spray ground park. So to go back to the schools, so we can do one of two things. We can either make some moves on the funds here, or we can just leave it right there. We can have them, the schools,
They can come back to us and tell us.
we can have them come to us
He
next.
said You would rather see money for that, but I don't know what the amount was, but $300,000.
300.
Extra.
Why don't we put 300 up there in the technology line and let them come back and explain to us why it has to be 300,000?
Well,
Whatever, a contractor that can do it for
I'm just saying,
150.
they can come back to us and we don't have to make this change today.
You don't, like I
They
said,
can come back to us next week.
if this is the only change left in the budget, this change flip flopping between these two things is an easy thing on the fly.
Is there any-
We could have dropped it 34,257.
Fund balance.
That's fine,
Okay, sorry, that's right. One we just
yeah. What else? Just scroll down real quick. and see if there's anything.
This is at the very bottom. So this is just the schools. Public safety, everything was funded. Some things were cut out of public works. And then that's it.
I got a question.
Talking
I
about.
got a question. This one's gonna be with the sheriff. And it's probably the wrong time to ask it, but I'll forget. because I've been drinking in non-potable water.
Major Wells says that's why he lost his hair. Several years.
Well, he's a runner too, and he runs at Pleasant Grove.
I know, all that, but this one also, if the lake does what they're, I don't know, if they're talking about the security force rather than their police department, will that have an effect on y'all?
You don't know until they do it. I would think it would probably have some effect on us. If it's a hybrid, you're talking about a hybrid program.
I think that's what they approved was hybrid.
Right. So Approved, does that mean they're gonna keep the whole staffing of law enforcement? That, that's the part, they have to work all that out.
Okay, and believe it or not, this was a conversation I had with two of the kids when we were riding around this road. They were like, Coach, you hear about what they're gonna do with the security force at the lake? I was like, yeah.
We're gonna do a little bit of that.
Well, no, that wasn't what they talked about. That mean the deputies gonna start coming through. So that's what
We've got a really good working relationship, and we've had several meetings, and I met that day with the general manager again, and kind of ran over everything, what they were wanting to do. And, I think what they're wanting to do is gonna be a great, fresh start to, once they get their person who's gonna be in charge, then we can all sit down and work out from scratch who's gonna do what and who's responsible for what and such. And I think it's a good opportunity for to get everything worked out and everybody's on the same page. And
you know what I'm thinking about, is this gonna mean we need to hire additional deputies? And I'm thinking about this from what
we
you
definitely need what we're getting this year, and depending on the changes for next year, we're gonna continue growing. What we're going to do also is we're trying to fit in, we have never done a command staff retreat. We're gonna do a day or two, and task everybody with a mission in their vision to come up with a 5 and 10 year plan.
I hear Disney World and taking it wide is a good plan.
And as well as, we're right now, we're shuffling people around, trying to have office space and cramming several people in one office. So,
Yeah, your place
Yeah,
is
we're-
too
we're-
small
we're-
already.
Yes, ma'am, we're kind of outgrown that.
We just got a water, Ms. Buckley.
Fluvanna has a habit of always putting things up too small.
They should put a basement in there.
That's right.
That would answer all the questions.
I've got a great picture for a retreat of amphitheater that faces the ocean, and we're leaving on the ship out of the Dominican Republic.
Anyway, we will do that, and we will come back to the board and give you an insight as to what we feel like the future holds. And the more the county continues to grow, and I can tell you honestly, the other night, we were so busy, the court had issued a capias on someone wanted to try to serve a need. We couldn't even do, we had to ask state police to do it, that we were, our manpower stretched so thin with the amount of calls that we had. But things have been on the uptick a little bit. It seems like it all comes in one time, but we're not going to ask for anything we don't need. Any other questions?
No, that's the only thing I had. What else?
No, so I mentioned amphitheaters, no, that's what you said. But two quick questions with regard to Pleasant Grove. One, is there a current plan, or have we funded putting a roof onto the little theater there? And have we addressed the electrical issues
But the
there?
problem is the direction of the theater, according to Mr. Spitzer, is the wrong direction. Even a roof, it'll keep it dry, but it won't keep the sun from melting the equipment. Right. In the right ballpark?
Correct?
Can you
That's
put
what I've been told.
a tent thing in there that accomplishes that, like, a permanent tent structure that does that?
I would have to look into that, but what I've been told, I don't think you would be able to see the performers. Is how low you'd have to get that tent down for the people up on the hill,
Is it?
if that makes sense. Because when I had to do it at the farm museum, I was only 3 or 4 feet off the ground with my tent. to where they couldn't bake their equipment.
I remember when we did the grand opening there.
I had to remember how to
Stare right
drive.
into the sun.
Well, I can tell you that stage is built for a NASA space shuttle to launch on. I mean, the number of posts that are in the ground that thing can handle, it is massive.
I'm working on one in the front of the park, in front of the house, and I'm hoping to have maybe an Eagle Scout do this thing.
Well, the one thing that I've talked about, I don't know, we gotta go in there and study what direction. But I always thought about where we park. You can put a stage in the bottom and treat that as a big bowl. As an amphitheater.
Oh, okay, you're talking out front.
Almost where we shoot the handicap hunt, where we do the handicap hunt across from the farm, right behind the farm museum, across from the summer kitchen.
Oh,
That's an
yeah.
amphitheater, that would be a good space.
Okay, I'm thinking big, I'm literally thinking about it at the beginning when we had COVID, we're trying to come up with graduation where you can sit in your cars.
Mhm.
I say, why don't we build a small stage down there in the bottom where you park, or in the front, to the right? And,
I park a lot of cars out there, and that could cause a lot of
Well,
problems.
that's the only thing I thought about.
That's why I would try to move it somewhere different.
I know where you're talking about. You're talking about down in the bottom behind the farm museum.
Almost behind our rodeo area, where our rodeo area.
But
is,
below.
behind that, Yeah,
In that bottom right there.
where they can be up on the rodeo area looking down.
Yes.
That's the spot.
That's understandable.
But the other thing with the current theater too was, electrical. I mean, last time I saw some folks performing there, it was blowing a fuse like every 30 minutes, they were blowing a fuse.
I don't know if we've had that issue in a long time.
Okay.
We have a power box down there, and plenty
They
of,
were using that power box.
and they have plenty of plugs on the stage now. I don't know if they had that
Okay.
when that was going.
Was that one of our?
Yeah, we've never had it.
Yeah, it was a rock and roll band, but it was like an event. It was something, you know.
You know how
we
long-
had
how
several
long ago?
performers, we had several performers.
Was this back when there was like when there was like the barbecue band
Yeah,
and,
something
and
like that,
brews
yeah.
and stuff they had back in
We've
the?
upgraded that stuff.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
not good, because that would be good.
There haven't been any really big events back there in quite some time.
Well, that's why I'm.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we get to
Get back
that Fridays after five
Yeah.
in Pleasant Grove? Well, you can't do it if you don't have water.
Mhm.
You know, you can't do it if you don't have potable water. Right? Can't do it if your bands aren't gonna show up every time they play.
Well, again, Mr. Spitzer has some money that we were talking about to build a stage in kind of the front bowl area in front of the house. That's where he
All
had.
that's for the cemetery,
I
behind
was
the
gonna say,
cemetery in the bottom,
cemetery
behind the cemetery in the bottom.
to the right. Yeah,
Between the house and the cemetery,
yeah,
and then there's a bowl that goes up. If you go to our county fair, it's where we have our stage at the county fair.
yeah.
So I'm looking to do like a 20 by 20 stage down there.
You're gonna call it the Grateful Dead Theater.
But
Well, how big is the one in the back?
30 by 30, I think.
I mean, I go big or go home.
We don't need anything bigger than 20 by 20. That's what we rent for our county fair, and everybody that performs on that.
Okay.
That's plenty. We have drums, we have everything. We have a whole ensemble out
And you
there.
got shade.
And there's shade,
And you
and we
got-
were able to put a tent and the sun's behind you when you're looking.
Could we be planting trees or lot shade down by the theater?
We could, but it blocks your view. It'll block somebody's view of, trees block views. So if you do put it, you'd have to put it in front of the stage for the sun, but it blocks somebody's view. And
Or
Somebody sitting up in front of the house and looking down at it?
no, he's talking about the back, correct? The
Well, I don't know what the
stage.
sun problem is there, so.
No, I think-
No, in the front, we don't have a sun problem. We won't have a sun problem with that.
No, not the front theater, I'm just talking, so you're basically saying the back theater isn't worth putting any money into, what you're saying.
Yeah, what I'm saying, I probably wouldn't put a stage back there at the
I
beginning.
don't know why it was put there.
I don't either. That was before me.
What are we trying to accomplish?
Huh?
I'm confused with what we're.
Trying to make Pleasant Grove a better experience for performances and things along those lines.
I think what I'm hearing is any money being pulled from the bus money to go to other
That's
things?
what I was looking at, yeah, that's why I was starting on that thing and was just asking these questions on that. In terms of, what are we doing to improve Pleasant Grove? That's kind of one of my objectives there. is-
The infrastructure.
About the backstage? I mean, it's like, you've been to a ball field, you've stayed at home plate, you've tried to hit, and you're looking dead into the sun trying to hit. It just doesn't, and that's exactly what this is.
That's
Like
what the
you're
performers
pitcher,
be looking at.
looking into the sun, the softball's getting hit at you, you're just gonna die.
I got you. I'm just, since it's coming up now, I'm just trying to figure
Yeah,
out how we
I'm
got into this.
kind of request Chris now, I think.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, that's somebody else. That's just a question. That was my last question
Let's
on that.
get to a conclusion.
The one thing about putting it.
Roselle's got her purse in her.
The one thing about putting it up to the house is it's, then you got everything up there.
Mm.
And that's where we want to get water to. So, you know, that's the other good thing about, if you put it up there, although we probably should look.
Yeah.
Make sure it doesn't interrupt it.
There are the pole barns there and you have people who use the pole barn. and then they
I
get
know.
I second.
Yeah, they can use.
Whatever she said, I said.
So,
I
I
said,
know that the closest.
I'll walk away.
I want to go through everyone.
All right,
I'll let
any other
you make a motion to
questions,
adjourn.
any other questions from the board about the budget?
No.
All
I'm
right.
not saying a word.
Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Motion to adjourn.
Why'd you take so long? All right, motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Ms. Booker, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Chair votes aye. You're adjourned.
So remember, next Wednesday, we have the public hearing for the budget and tax rates. And so like 13th, yeah. And generally, that's not a long, again, it's just a public hearing unless the board has any, but won't have any